I'm doing it.
Okay. So many things.
And there we are. Hi, everyone. It's Sir Rithkin from Ontier with a very special episode of Murder of Dukes, sort of a combination with a sisters interview. I have to, our special guest tonight is His Grace Fabian Arnett, right? Arnett von Schweitzen, is that right?
Schwetzingen.
Schwetzingen. Okay. I'm just going to forget the last part and then I won't mess it up. From the West. And I just want to thank first Duke Felix from Lockhawk for hooking me up with you. And I want to explain the reason why we're doing a joint sisters Murder of Dukes interview is because, you know, once Fabian and I started talking, I realized that he's a quadruple peer. He's been playing a very long time, and this is like very special. He put together like over 100 pictures, which should be super fun for everyone because they're super cool photos and they go back from like to his first event. So thank you for that. Not everybody does that for me, and that was amazing.
It was a fun little process.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't think we've sort of explained why we do this. I started this as a challenge to myself. It was supposed to fight, I think what was 50 Dukes. And then we went into this COVID thing and I'm like, well, how can I change my my quest? And so I decided to interview 50 Dukes, but COVID went on way longer than I had anticipated. And I went through those first 50 very fast. So I told Sean, Duke Sean, that I was going to try for 100. And I didn't quite make 100 by the end of 2020, but you are, I think, 95 or 96. So I'm going to finish this month. So it's been a super cool process.
And then
anyway,
you're going to be done?
Well, I probably will still do a few more Dukes, but it won't be as regular.
Okay.
Because I've already reached out to some people and they're very cool people and I would love to talk to them. So I'm going to still do that.
And we'll still be doing the sisters interviews on Wednesdays, and then I do a Laurel's interview thing on Tuesdays. So
okay.
those will still be ongoing.
Oh,
yeah. So that's going to happen. And I'm also going to add a show that sort of talks about how you can use this time to up your kit in all the different ways. And that'll probably start happening in February. So that's just for you guys to know in the future. But I want to get focused on His Grace. So we usually start these interviews with you telling us your origin story, like where, when, how you found the SCA. So if you could start there, that would be great.
Oh my God. I was living in El Paso before my dad moved to Germany for the military. And I was in a hobby store looking at D&D modules, you know, and this guy came up and said, hey, you like that stuff? You know, you like the medieval fighting stuff? I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. And he says, if you like that, you know, you got to come check this out. Now, and he took me over to his car, and that's not the sort of thing we'd ever do these days. Right. Just running and screaming. And, but he took me to his car and he opened the trunk and he had just, you know, the suits of armor in there. And he had, you know, one of the helmet with, you know, the side open, you know, visor things, just like out of the, Monty Python. It was just, but it was the coolest stuff ever. I'm like, that's awesome. You know, where do you guys do this? And he told me where he does it. I'm like, wait, that's my buddy's house where we play D&D on. That's why they were using the coat hangers, making those rings and stuff. Like, oh my God. Okay. So went over there on Sunday. This is back in probably 1980, somewhere in that time period, 80, 81, maybe. In there, and went over and was watching their training in this guy's backyard. And I show up, and the one guy that's got the weapon is his back is to me, and there's a guy with a shield that I can see, and the guy's teaching people how to fight against a ball and chain. So he was taking the handle and to show you that you could take this handle and strike it against the edge of the shield, and this ball would flip around and hit the opponent in the middle of the back, and there was really little that they could do about it. And so, you know, you hear this, you know, hit, knock, blah, and that's like, oh my God, that's awesome. This is the greatest stuff ever. And then I was listening to their stories of how when their king was out fighting in tournaments, and if he, if he fell on the field, they had to rush out and grab him and drag him back on the sidelines before somebody else could take his crown and claim themselves as king. And I was like, didn't think anything of it at the time. Like, that's awesome. That's, heroic, saving your king and everything else. My mom told me there's no way you can do this. You don't have the time, forget about it. And I was, I think in the 8th grade at the time, and then we had shortly thereafter, there was a homework assignment from language arts or something where you had to come up with like a heraldic device. And so I'm sitting there drawing devices and everything else, trying to figure out stuff. Went home and got, metal tent poles and some carpet and wrapped those things with tape, and we started beating my brothers with them. And so, we'd go ahead and have, making shields and just running around the neighborhood, having a blast doing that. And, eventually they didn't want to play. So I'd give them all the big weapons and I'd take the small ones, and we'd go out there and see if I can entice them into doing more. And then we moved to Germany in middle of my junior year and didn't think anything more of it. And then after I'd graduated and I was working on base and had a good job, my mom came and said, "Hey, remember that medieval group you liked? Your scoutmaster's in that." I was an assistant scoutmaster at the time. And she goes, "Yeah, he just came back from this trip from the Netherlands, where his group helped pay for some of it." And, so I went and talked to him. I'm like, "That sounds awesome." And like, "Peter, dude, why didn't you ever tell me about this?" And he's like, I didn't know you would be interested." And that was Terrifying Grey Dragon is the person that got me, started there. He goes, "Well, there's an event this weekend. You can, I can lend you clothes. I can get you in contact with the people that'll, see you there, and they'll take care of you when you get to the site and talk to you when you get back." And so, off I trundled to my first event, and I, get out there and I'm watching guys in armor, fighting each other, and think it's absolutely fantastic. And it's just, the time of my life. Next morning, we're camping, and, you're able to rent camping equipment from the rec center on base. So you rent your tents and your camping equipment, whatever else you need. And so there was a row of tents around in front of the campfire the next morning. And I'm, sitting back and talking to people and just trying to figure out what's going on. And they're like, I said, "Fabian, you really, or Steve, you really fit in. You should, get a name." And I'm like, "Well, how do you do that?" And they said, "Well, here's this book of pre-approved authorized names, and just look in it and, see what you think." And so I was like, "Okay, I can do that." And I was like looking through this thing, and the entire time I'm doing this, Anton and Prox were somebody I had met there, and they're, laying and snuggling in a tent where you can see them. They'd roll off to the side a little bit, and be giggling and noises and everything else, and they'd roll back and join conversation a little bit, and then roll the other way. And it was this nice, social exchange they were doing with the rest of the group, and it seemed like a great group. And so I'm going through these names, and I was on the F's. I was like, does the name have to be exactly what's in here, or can you change it a little bit? Like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "Well, this name here, Fabian. Fabian's kind of flat. It's like, could you be a Fabian?" And they're like, "Well, if you want that, you have to research it yourself." I'm like, "Okay, fine." Close the book, hand it back to them. When I got back home that day, I went over to the library on base and I started looking up stuff. And I came across, Fabius Augustus is the Roman general who defeated Hannibal using attack and withdrawal methods. And he gave an alternate meaning to the name Fabian to also mean cautious and careful instead of the Latin original meaning of bean farmer. I'm like, "Oh, that's me, cautious and careful." Yeah, so became Fabian. At that point, I was going ahead and doing that. And I had found out we had an incipient Shire meeting on Monday. So I went over there and joined the local people, and I hadn't met anyone at the event. So I had found the address and the phone number and gone over and met them. And they told me about the next day, there was a guy that hosted an armor shop where you could go and get patterns and ideas and stuff. I'm like, that's awesome. And was Viscount Sir Amy Hempel. And like, "Oh, that's awesome." So I, drove out to his place the next day, knocked on his door, got let in. And it was still the most stunning display I've ever seen. Going into his living room, and he had these finished helmets like all over the place. So he was using one as a footrest when I walked in. So he just had one on the floor on the footrest, and he had one over on the shelf in different places around the room. And it's like, I said, I understand I can get, patterns, from you. Oh yeah, what do you need? And I told him, and so I, go over there, I'm tracing out everything and, trying to get some ideas and hints on how to do this stuff. And he goes, so, are you going to be needing a helmet? I go, that'd be awesome. He goes, what kind do you want? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I saw this guy in this, this other thing I described. He goes, oh, that's a Soleil. Like, oh, that was awesome. And I think he was a bit disappointed because there were no Soleils around. I think he was hoping that there was something that was out there that I would want. But he said, okay, well, we can talk about that later. Got the patterns, went home the next day, and had to find out what stores would carry metal, steel. And I had no idea what to use. And there was a guy in the group, Ofer Amram, who's like, oh, don't worry, we got this. We're going to take you over to the Bauhaus and we'll get these supplies and we'll figure out what else you need. And, so for the metal, we can, get it from this other place. And he just kind of, took me in hand and got supplies and just had me, pick up plastic cement mixing buckets, these black plastic, things that were, pretty decent weight. And we found they sold pop rivets, the two-piece rivets there, and some buckles and all sorts of stuff. We just grabbed anything we could think of. I got Velcro and Velcro strips and you name it. And I went home and started, I bought myself a jigsaw and started cutting out the metal that he had and made myself a pair of knees and elbows. And then I got some coin bags, from the bank that you carry the change in. Got some of those from them, and it just ended up making this weird, bizarre suit of armor-ish thing. But I had everything done by that Friday, so we could go out to the first practice on Saturday. Now we were the only two people that had any armor. He had only had one helmet between us. So we had to drive somewhere else where somebody, we could take turns fighting them and, swapping the helmet back and forth. So we didn't get a chance to ever fight each other. I had done slow work with him at the first event. So this Saturday morning, I was doing some slow work with Saturday night, doing some slow work with him, and we would start off nice and slow, and then it would get, almost full speed, nose to nose, just smacking. And Anton had come over at one point, was drunk. Whoa! Stop! On safe. I said, okay, if you're gonna do that, back up so your swords can't touch each other's hands. Now you're at a safe distance. Go ahead. Oh, okay, got it. And we start off and we do nice and slow, and all of a sudden, next thing you're nose to nose, going faster and having to stop. And so now we're at arm fighter practices, and everything just took off from there. So, and it was just, nonstop at that point.
So I have to say, like, when you told me that you took your name because it meant cautious and careful, like, I have seen you fight. I have seen videos of you fight, and I would never, ever use those two adjectives.
Would you use bean farmer?
What?
Would you use bean farmer?
No. Okay, so it was just better than bean farmer. All right. Before we go on to all of the legends of the West are saying hello to you. Duke Paul says hello. Duke awesome. Beck says hello. Sagan says hello. So
God, I miss those guys.
Yeah. So anyway, they're all watching and saying hello. I kind of feel like maybe we should look at the photo of your first event, and maybe some of the people in Drac involved now. Would that be okay with you?
Sure. We can look at Terrafon's clothes.
Oh, yes. All right. All right. Can you guys see the picture? Yes. No?
I can see it on screen. I'm not seeing there. Yes, it's online now. Yes.
Okay, great. So do you want to explain what this is?
That's me pitching in, helping clean stuff up after the fighting. I had seen two guys fighting in there, and I just asked if there's anything I can do to help out. And one guy, the knight, kind of looked me up and down. He goes, grab my weapon and shield. So I did, and that was just me carrying it off after having been at the event probably less than half an hour.
Wow.
So just a very young 18-year-old kid there.
Cool. And I could probably make this bigger. I think this is one of your mentors.
Yeah, that's Terrifying Grey Dragon, who got me into the SCA. Sent me to my first event. He had, right after I found the SCA, within the first couple of months, my parents, my dad got orders to move back to the States, back to El Paso, which I had no interest in going to at all. I'd lived in El Paso far too long, no interest in going back. And I had a full-time job, and I was, tooting around Europe. I mean, when do you have that opportunity? So I did the paperwork, became a self-sponsored civilian, and then started looking around for a place to live, because it was very difficult to find that then. And Peter had offered to let me come live with him and his wife. And I wasn't so sure. I was looking for other things, trying to find other options, even though I loved him and his wife, to death, and his daughter, Tabitha. But anyway, eventually we became roommates. We got a house. We got a house together. He was on the first floor. I was in the attic on the third floor, and everything was good. We used to have fighter practices inside the living room.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
So I just found out that Sir Torgil passed away just a few days ago. So that's the gentleman there that was fighting. That's in Caerphilly Castle in Wales. There was a couple that was going to get married, and they invited everybody to come join them at this castle they were renting. They were going to have their wedding and feast in. So a group of us went, and the couple that I was living with at the time, myself and some others, rented a RV and drove from Germany up, took the ferry across to England, figured out how to drive on the wrong side of the road on the opposite side steering. It just was very odd. But then we went and got a chance to fight in this castle. The courtyard pictures and everything else just awesome. It's the biggest castle in England, I know for sure. So it's the only time I've been in a double elimination tournament, lost once, and still lost the tournament. So I'm not quite sure exactly how that happened, other than the fact they ran out of time and they wanted to get on with the wedding. Sir Torgil won the first fight, and they said, "Okay, that's good. We are done. We're out of here." And I'm like, wait, you're kidding. This is my first time, finally in a tournament, and you're just sigh. So he felt bad. He goes, "Hey, I'm not done. You want to get some more fights? We'll go and do some pickups." So we took turns holding the postern gate and charging through the tunnels and everything else, and just had a great time, fighting for quite a while afterwards. And then we, took our armor off and went and joined everyone else. So in that that hideous thing of armor there, the body armor, the shoulders were all segmented, held together by those money bags, and they had the body that wrapped around that clipped, and you had the top that came and flipped over and buckled down, and it had a groinal protection system that was all articulated in the front and tassets off to the side, and it basically was all in one piece of armor. And then just the legs were plastic with plastic lames, and I couldn't figure out how to articulate them, so I just used paracord holding everything together so it wouldn't gap.
Hey, people still do that.
Do what you have to do to get on the field, right?
Exactly. So you're fighting two sword here. Did you start out sword and shield, or did you just sort of play around with a whole bunch of stuff?
Played around with a whole bunch of stuff. The very first fighting I ever saw was a guy that was fighting with a bastard sword against sword and shield. And I thought that was the stupidest thing ever. I mean, how can you possibly ever expect to beat a guy with a sword and shield? And so that just didn't make any sense to me. And so I, got his sword and shield and started, fighting. And then when I went to the local fighter practice, which was in Ramstein Air Base, there was a castle there that they had fighter practice in. So as you enter the outer gate in the yard, there was a spot over there that we would all gather and start fighting. And I was watching somebody else had fought with a bastard sword and got permission to pick it up afterwards and pick that up. And I said, oh, I can see how you could use this. And that's when I did that one. So this is horrific. These leather gauntlets here. It was just leather pieces kind of articulated a little bit with bands of metal in there so my hands wouldn't get destroyed. And then because you had to be cool, I used these studs that I got from Piccadilly Circus in London, and I put these studs all over them in different patterns on the left and right. And I was thinking I was like some guy like from Thieves World.
Oh, punk rock.
You look all punk rock and badass, right?
Oh my God.
Nice.
Bad. And so, and that's, so once I was, from my first week in the SCA, I knew and Anton was a squire at the time. So I had figured out that I either wanted to be in Anton's household or Sir Ames Squire, because they had both just impressed the snot out of me. And ended up being in Anton's household and became his, he had a rank system and everything. So I was his sergeant at arms on there. And so I was the one that was to help get all of his guys, the new guys in armor, make sure everybody got trained and got up to speed. And in the household, you had to learn how to sew. So you had to learn how to do your own garb. They required you to volunteer at events. We would meet at their house on weekends where we weren't going to events and be there pretty much the entire weekend. And Friday night would usually be the raucous canasta games, so, drinking Perminators, which is, a double box. So it's a, high percentage alcohol beers, and we'd be drinking those. Or I did Osbach and Cokes was my drink of choice. We just go out there and, play with like Lord Garth the Lost. And I got to learn all sorts of fun language from him. But we'd be there all weekend. We'd do some armoring on Saturday. We'd do a fighter practice on Sunday, get on a train and go home. And so I would take the train up and he would pick me up from the train station and hang out the entire weekend. So that was him first. He got permission from Rame, his night, to start his own household. And so this was our household surcoats. And pretty soon we had 6 or 8 fighters in armor that we could field, and I think eventually we got more than that. Eventually, like 10 or 12, which was crazy for Drachenwald. That was not a lot of fighters over there. Good time.
Wow.
So while I was looking for a place to live over in Germany, there was a lady there that was coming to the incipient Shire meetings, and she had let me sleep at her house for a little while I was trying to find a place, because I had about a week from the time my parents left, got orders to move, to the point where I was out on my own. So it was a very abrupt transition. And so I was, still trying to figure out the whole housing situation. I had put all the possessions I decided to save with me over in Germany, and Terrafon's storage unit below the BOQs, the officers' quarters at that time. And but she had started letting me, sleep at her house as long as I didn't have leave anything behind that was proof that I had been there, because she didn't have permission in the lease to do that. And she was a great seamstress, and so she had offered to make some court guard for me. And so that's velvet and rabbit fur court guard that I was wearing for the first time.
Wow.
Very
Didn't
cool.
have tights, so I found these dance skin things that were blue and shiny that I was wearing under that, and that's a different story.
Different story.
So that is probably, I had the very first event I went to was called the Penzic Pity Party. For those people that weren't able to make it to Penzic, they threw themselves a party and an event, and that's the event that I showed up at. On my 1-year anniversary of being in the SCA, I had flown to Sunnyvale in California to check out the area and see what it was like. So my sister was going to get married the next year. So I was kind of scouting it out and seeing what I thought of the area. and to see if I wanted to move here. And when I flew out, I had brought some unfinished armor projects, which was kind of my thing. Every month I had a different set of armor. A lot of times I'd be in outlying areas, people wouldn't have armor. So I'd say, well, shit, take this, I'll just make another one. And so I would leave, anything they needed pretty much behind, just make myself something else in the meantime. I was going through like a jigsaw month, just wearing out the motors. And just, hey, Craftsman tools, you replace it. So I take it in, they knew me by name. Yeah, it was great. So this is, that helmet was the first Soleil that I had ever, the first helmet I'd ever worked on. Because I could make all the rest of the armor, but there's no way I could possibly make a helmet. Those are too complicated. And I had commissioned Rain to make a helmet, and he was now turning around and leaving, getting ready to leave Germany and go back to the States. And so he wanted to finish up all his commissions. And I was wearing some god awful thing that you haven't shown yet in a spun top. And he said, yeah, bring that helmet with you when you come. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. So I showed up, and he just, to me, it was very memorable. He took me out. He was living in this house that had a courtyard in the middle, that was all cobblestones. And he had the big stump out in the middle where he'd been armoring, the anvil and everything on that. And he would go to his storage unit and he'd come out and get out the tools. I remember him looking through, trying to find a jigsaw blade that he could cut this 12 gauge spun top with. And he was just kind of looking at these. There was no metal cutting blade anywhere. And he was just he would pull out these things that were meant for wood. He goes, are you interested in cutting metal? And he would take that thing and put it in. He goes, you're going to cut metal today. And he would just go ahead and start, cutting the top, cut the sides off of it, cut a big triangle out of the front, took his hammers and he kind of beat it together. So, okay, now, and he had tack welded it. He had welded the front down. It was okay. Go home, cut out another one of these, make it, fit everything up, grind this off and bring it back next week. And so I thought, okay, great. So went back and forth and was doing that. And I had made everything except for the visor before I was having to leave to Penzig. I didn't have a helmet at that point, so I'd given everything away, didn't have anyone else. And my first attempt at a visor was horribly wrong. Looked like a big Klingon thing. So when I had just done the dishing on the front and had this big lobe that stuck out in the front. I'm like, how do you do this? I can't get it to fit. And he goes, oh my God. So he took over there, of course, in like 5 minutes, he had the thing, just fitting pretty as you please. And just a monster of a man. I remember at one point needing to, just take something and open it up and just take it across his chest and flex and open up these, whatever armor thing we had been working on, and just amazed at what he was doing. But
so you have a squire's belt here. Did you become a squire from the man-at-arms position?
So that's actually brown, I believe. Oh, because okay. That helmet has the brass around it at this point. There was no brass before I came to Sunnyvale. Okay. And I had met up with Drew Fortescue, Sir Drew Fortescue, that was here at the time. Ended up driving up to San Francisco, bought brass rivets, brought sheets of brass, brought other tools, and then went over to his shop, and I was able to cut out the decorative visor bits and get everything else working, get the chainmail on. So then I would have a helmet that I needed in like 2 weeks when I was driving out to Penzig. So before I came to, that's probably a red belt in there. So Rain ended up squiring me at one event. It was a little confusing at the time. I was making my first placard, and I had done the fold on it, and I was doing the tassets that were coming off of it. And I was having to finish it up at night on Friday because I was planning on wearing it the next day. So I had to get everything finished. And Rain came in front of me, and it was an odd thing. He came and stood right in front of me as I'm trying to work. And I kind of glance up and see him. And I kind of look around, there's a few other people. And he goes, Fabian, are you mine? I'm like, oh God, I don't know. I mean, you're Anton's knight. I'm his man-at-arms. So I guess my fealty, to him probably goes to you. Is Fabian, are you mine? Because Fabian, are you mine? Yes, I'm yours. Absolutely, yes. Okay, great, I'm yours. And he goes, rise. And I'm like, okay. So I stands up and he, takes out his knife and he puts it against his chest with his hand on it. He goes, no, now that you will have the blood of it. And he does this whole lineage thing in front of him. And then he, just pulls this knife out and he holds his hand to his chest. And I'm going, he goes, put it at your hand. I'm like, I goes, and then, Anton leaned over to me and goes, it'll be fine. Put it at your hand. I'm putting it out. And then he starts sawing on my hand. I realized that the knife isn't sharp, but he's sawing back and forth, on my hand. I'm a little bit confused. And he grabs my hand and we do this, this bonding thing and, ends up doing a squiring ceremony and squires me, there. And I'm going, oh, okay, this was completely unexpected out of the blue. He had no clue what was happening. And then immediately afterwards, during that ceremony, he had called for me to get belted as befits a squire, and Anton had requested a boon that we be belted together so we can go around that evening together, and he can show me around, which was awesome. He then took me over to the lady of the household I was in, Lady Proxidia, and she goes, Fabian, you don't know what you've done. And I'm like, I'm still confused and perplexed. The entire time the squiring was happening, Anton was standing right behind Raim off on his shoulder, behind his shoulder. And I kept looking over at Anton and he was just stone-faced. He wasn't giving me any sort of clues, wasn't saying anything. So I was having a really hard time getting a read of what was happening. Everything goes forward, do everything. And she says, you don't know what you've done. And she says, you did not ask to be released. I will release you from your oath to the household. Go forward and be a squire sort of thing. I'm like, I had no clue about any of that stuff, completely new. So I was squired to Raim for the remainder of his tour over there, which was probably 6 or 8 months until he got PCS orders and then got called forward. When I was wearing that court garb, that was the event where he released all of his squires. Gave a letter of recommendation to Anton to carry forward to his next lands. And just after that is when I went to Penzic. And so instead of being in a squire and part of a knight's household or being part of a household, I was just kind of lost on my own again, just kind of felt really kind of aimless at that point at Penzic, just not really having anywhere that you felt like you belonged. But
the tail on your stele here is incredible. Incredible.
A little big.
Yeah.
So and I don't understand the whole chainmail thing. There was a guy that had done all the chainmail for me, and it was Butch. It was like 6-in-1 for almost like 6 inches of it, and then the foreman used to come down way over the shoulders, and that was cut back eventually. And this was.
I'm gonna stop sharing for a second because I have some follow-up questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So you had said that Raim and Anton had super impressed you. And what was it about how they participated in the SCA that you admired?
Well, going over to Raim's house and he's just, decorated with all the armor that he's made, using it as a footstool. But he had a really awesome kit, that really stood out. But more than that, he sewed a lot of his own clothes. He made his own boots. He made garb for he and his wife. He was a fantastic bard, would play instruments and sing songs and tell stories and just so well-rounded, did just about everything. I'm not sure what he doesn't do. And it was just impressive. He was also had been Prince of Drachenwald, for several times. And so he was one of the premier viscounts, in the principality. But it just, everything about him just exuded charisma. One of those guys that you either loved or you hated, and most about everybody just loved him. It's just absolutely fantastic guy. And Anton was younger, a couple years older than me, probably just like 5 years older than me or so. In the Air Force, he was a sergeant at the time. He was a sergeant. But just he and Proxidia had just such a fun chemistry about them, and we're always just laughing and smiling and rolling across tents and coming back and joining conversations and laughing. And it just, you always felt good around him. Again, he was one of those guys that just oozed charisma. He just, charm just seemed to just drip off of him, in a good way. So, and, just getting a chance to hang out at his house, before he had a household, somehow I think I was just originally was trying to get to the fighter practice. So it was, in between times where I didn't have a car, the car was being worked on or whatnot. And he would just say, I'll pick you up to the train station. And then I think it was a little bit easier for him to pick me up from the train station ahead of time, the day before, instead of trying to shuffling, going one direction, picking me up from the train station, coming back, getting armored, going, shuffling over to this, coming back, and then having to take me back to the train station, and just all the ferrying. So it ended up just being hanging out at his house and doing everything. And he did the armoring and the leather working, and his wife was just a fantastic artist, with painting and calligraphy. They had fun singing. They, introduced me to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, all the time. And they had a VHS copy that was being worn out. And I don't know, just everything about it was just absolute fun.
So did you discover a love of armoring first, or was it just that you had all these ideas for kits, so you just went for it?
Well, guys and swords, it's a thing. And in order to fight, you needed armor. So that was just the first thing, just being able to do it. And then wanting to, seeing other stuff, seeing what Rain was making and stuff, being inspired by it. That previous picture with the brown coat of plates, that was just a find at a thrift store, that one of the suede jackets. And I'm like, I could take that and rip off the arms and, rip the stuff into it, and boom, we're done. Just finding some ways of making things look good. Then it's just got to be a matter of trying to look the part, I guess. And the other thing in Drachenwald is everybody they cared. They were doing all the attempts at heraldry and presentation and, garb. I think when you're going to events in castles, and you're around them all the time, it just, you see the real armor, you see the pictures and the paintings everywhere. It's part of the history that's ingrained around you. I think everyone was taking great pains trying to look the part, or cover it with a surcoat so you can see it.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, you ended up, is it a falcon? Is that what that is? Your bird?
Eagle. I call them chickens. But
okay.
Eagles.
Was that the same device that you in the 8th grade had gone for, or is it different?
It's different. I was trying originally. I was in the 8th grade. There was uprooted, eradicated oaks, and was something else over there. So I don't know if it was eradicated oaks and eagles or something. And there was busy,
Yeah.
And eventually, working with Anton and Prox, they, helped, guide you through something that looked a little bit better. And so it was an evolving process. And I'm not sure how I think because I was originally doing quartered stuff, and you'll see other pictures of things. I had the chickens in the corners, and then had, just trying to figure out something that looked right.
It's very cool. It's a very striking device.
Thank you.
Yeah. You want to look at the more pictures, or do you want to? Okay.
Yeah. Let me know when you have any other questions.
So you seem like you were really attracted to the art part of, when you talk about these people that inspired you, you talk about their art. When did you start to really get into your art and
Well, as I mentioned, Proxidia kind of insisted that people do art. So the other person that started was about a week apart from me. His name was Rich Waters. Percival was his name, and we would hang out there. And he was just one of those insanely talented guys that could draw anything and paint stuff. So he and Prox got along famously, because she would do oil painting and calligraphy and illumination and just you name it. So they had a nice special connection there. And he wasn't really interested in the fighting side, so they did art. But the they kind of insisted that people going to events were going to do more than just sit around and drink or just fight and get off the field. No, if there's A&S, you're going to join A&S competitions, and we'll help you with that, and whatever you want to do, but you're going to be doing something. So
have you carried that over into your dependents and students?
Honestly, I don't require it of them. I'm mindful of how much time life takes. And so I don't want to overburden them, and I don't want them to get pushed away either, because they feel that they're not living up to the expectations they're supposed to have. But usually there's ways of encouraging them and working with them, trying to find out what their passions are, and work with them on developing whatever skills they have and interests that they have. And sometimes it's not always in the same person. Sometimes you have somebody that just wants to learn how to do armor. And unfortunately, armoring isn't the sort of thing that you can pack up and take to events all the time.
Right.
So having people come over to study making armor doesn't work out that often. And so I was really looking forward to moving back to the States and being able to meet other armorers and learn and explore and just figure out what we could do and figure out this art. And it never really worked out that way. The people that were making armor, for the most part, were either around here were doing it for a living. And so if they're helping you, it's kind of taking bread off their table. So I had showed up, and the first thing I did is trying to find people that are doing the armoring, and I had questions on things I wanted to make and how would you do it, and you had just youthful puppy, right? And so I remember going over to Duke Beck's house, who's living with Thomas Eben of Ruislip, who was also doing an armoring business called All Saints. And so Norham was also part of that group and just making some gorgeous armor, very artistic. And I remember going over to their house and talking with him. And Duke Steve was making his stealth Ducal at the time, the cornet, little black small thing. You've probably seen him wearing it. It's his primary one. And I remember with the audacity of youth, just be admiring that a lot. That is really cool. When I'm a Duke, will you make me one of those? And he looked at me and he goes, yeah, first become a Duke first. Do the hard part and then we'll talk. So I think, okay, but when I am, will you make me a cornet? And he was, he refused to answer, at that point. So, and that's the only cornet I have now. He finally did make me the ducal cornet, and so that's the one that I have. So
he says you made the roses for Elena's stealth.
Yeah, I had fun doing that. We were in it was fun meeting her when she came back from deployment, and they had a chance to reign together, and they were another fun couple to be around. They reminded me a lot of Anton and Prox, their current side of dynamics and stuff. So when he asked, about getting some help with it, by all means, it's fun to do.
When you went to PennSec that first time and you felt sort of like you were drifting, I don't know if I said that right, but did you meet anyone at PennSec that later became a mentor or a friend?
Not really.
No?
It was, so driving across country, getting out and getting the armor and going immediately to the pickup field, fighting all day. So when I was in armor and fighting people, zero problems meeting people, zero problems talking with them, we're having this. And they say, hey, we're having a party tonight at this camp. Tell them so-and-so sent you and we'll see you there. And then I'd go, oh my God, who was that? So I'm trying to remember afterwards. You show up to this camp. Okay, this is the camp. And you're trying to talk to the person that's security at the gate. Hey, this guy on the pickup field told me to come by, and who was it? And when you didn't know, they would just send you on your way. So, and that was pretty much, my event, for that, except for, Axel the Travestia was the prince of the time of Drachenwald. He was good about, having his guys fighting together and, taken care of. And so he you know, tried to do some of that, but he had his household and everything else there as well. And so, you know, for the most part, it was the most amazing event and the loneliest event I've ever been to.
Yeah.
So.
And it's huge, right? So if you don't know the people or their names, like it's really easy to be lost.
You don't have an in, and there's too many people to let everybody just come.
Right.
So.
Right. I think that was the most surprising for me. The only time I've ever been to Penzic was that they actually had people at the gate deciding whether you could go in or not, because I had never been to an SCA event where not everybody was welcome. But I get it. I get why it happens. It just was very different than I had ever experienced. So
why haven't you been back?
Oh, okay. I was left at the airport, so it kind of left me with a really bad taste in my mouth. Avaloq left me at the airport. Yeah, and so I had to wait until Davin came in, and Davin and my sister took me to site. So yeah, and I had just graduated from law school, so I didn't have any money. So it was very stressful for me. And now I have money, but I don't have so much time. So that's why I haven't been back. But I would really like to go back, especially after doing all these interviews and meeting so many people.
Oh, and COVID is over. We can actually see each other.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So yeah, that's my bad Penzic story. I was so mad at Avaloq. I can't even tell you. Anyway,
that's the event that I got heat exhaustion really bad.
Yeah, it was hot. It's always hot. Yeah. So when you went to the West, though, it sounds like you made a lot of friends and probably a lot of mentors.
It took a while.
It took a while. Did you end up swearing to somebody in the West?
So I knew I was moving to the West because my sister was going to be getting married later on that year. So I wanted to get a job, get settled, and I was using the marriage as an excuse to just move from Penzic and come back here and get situated so I could, you know, go to college and get everything, you know, starting from there. And turns out that Anton got orders to go to Travis Air Force Base, which is just above the Bay Area, and I wanted to be in the San Jose area. So I was like, "So when are you moving? You know, when are your PCS?" And he goes, "Well, this day." I'm like, "Well, shit, I'm going anyway. Let's just do it together." And so we were doing it, you know, Anton and Prox and their son Wolfram. And then so I was going, and then Rich Percival was out of high school at the time. And he goes, "Well, shit, my dad's down in LA, so I'll move back too," you know. And so we all just, you know, kind of took a plane together, came here at the airport, you know, gave him a hug, and then I came down here, and they were up in the Travis area, you know, for a while. But as you mentioned, like with Penzic, how hard it is to get into camps or anything else. It was hard to get into the social groups in the West as well. So
about what year was this that you moved?
89. So I started in the SC in 87, 88 went to Penzic, 89 moved to the West. So it was trying to impress the other armors and stuff. And so very youthful, very energetic. And so I was trying to, you know, coordinate meeting with the local guys. I wanted to learn. I wanted to you know, do stuff with them. And there were several days in a row where I was going from my work, going to where he was, hanging out in a parking lot until, you know, certain times so I could start calling to see if he was home yet, to see if I could, you know, come over, you know, because we had said, well, maybe tomorrow. Okay, well, maybe tomorrow. So I would get off work, I would go up here, I'd wait in the parking lot, you know, for a couple hours, you know, get change for the cell phone, so the pay phone, so I could go ahead and try calling him. And, you know, so, you know, he goes, "Well, I just got home now, so why don't you give me a chance to, you know, relax a little bit and call me back later and see how I feel." I'm like, "Okay, no problem." So I'd hang out and wait, you know, because there wasn't much else in that area. And so, you know, I give it some time. I call back because, you know, I'm just, you know, I don't think tonight's a good night. So why don't you try again tomorrow? Oh. And so this happened like 3 days in a row. You know, at one point, you know, I called and Duke Stephen was there, and I called him. "Hey, you know, Tom mentioned maybe I could come over and this, that, and the other. Is that okay? He goes, well, you have to talk to him about that. I'm like, okay, well, he's not home yet. So, okay, great, I'll call back later. And called back later, and the phone rang and rang and rang. And it was one of those things where, I just had the mental image of somebody on the other end going, can't they get a hint? And it was just, just like the gut punch and everything else. And so you just, hang up and drive home. And that was lots of stuff like that. You think you're making inroads with people, but when it's time at, the everybody's, at an event, they're going off to dinner somewhere, you're the one left, because you weren't the one that was, invited anywhere, or, you're going around the Eric and everybody has their, pavilions or their household setups, and there was no place really to hang out or sit. So you would just, find out what you could do. And there were some people that were, very opening as well. John Theophilus was another squire at the time, and he's just awesome people. He's, he was the coolest guy in the West as far as I was concerned. We had just a lot of fun together, doing things.
He is so genuinely friendly to everyone.
Absolutely. It just gives you the shirt off his back, and is just outgoing and gracious. And, he was a fantastic, guy to meet. But
I think it's hard when you're that excited and committed, and people don't actually understand that you are.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that we don't have to know who it is, but whoever it was has probably had a million people say they wanted to come over and armor with them, and they're probably all jaded, and and here you are, the real deal, super excited and eager and there, and you just didn't meet at the right time for it to work.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that's super sad. I don't know how to fix that. That's something that I think about a lot, because I think sometimes we don't recognize in new people how much they really want to do things, and we don't facilitate it well enough.
In Drachenwald, it was easy because you'd go to an event. They were small, if usually about 50 people or so, maybe up to 100. But you'd go there when you didn't recognize somebody. You would go up, introduce yourself. You need anything? Are you new? What can I do? And it was immediately you're just brought in. They were so happy to see somebody else.
Right.
And it was just so welcoming and gracious. It was just awesome. And I didn't have any ill will towards, anybody in the West that I've met and didn't get any of those immediate inroads with. I get it. There's only so much time at events. You have your own groups and everything else. When you get there, trying to do all your own stuff, spend some time with other people. And sometimes you only have 10 or 15 minutes with a good friend at an event that you can really sit down and do anything with. So time for somebody else that's just, new.
Right.
So,
How has that experience colored how you have interacted with new people once you did get established?
So I think that coming from a Drachenwald background and just having that open and giving nature, I tend to go around, and for people that I don't know, just going up and introducing myself or finding out what their story is. And frequently you find people that are new. And so, trying to find ways of making them feel more welcome. Unfortunately, one of the things that's happened is I think we've outsourced a lot of our hospitality. We expect, to have a place that somebody can go to borrow garb. Oh, you're new, need garb? Go over there, they'll help you out. Oh, you need this? Oh, go over there, they'll help you out. As opposed to taking that personal connection and that personal time to take them under your wing and make sure they're taken care of. And I think because you can say there's a place for them to go, it makes it an easy out for you just to go ahead and stop the interaction at that point.
I'd never thought about it that way, but it's true. And then they probably hit a dead end there. They get to borrow the garb for one day, but nobody's there to say, hey, come over and use my sewing machine. I'll teach you how, and let's make some garb.
And this is all about this personal interactions. The personal friendships you make are what make this group so amazing.
Super interesting. Just the way.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What advice would you give to somebody who's new, who's meeting those same challenges? Just stick with it?
Yeah. So if you have any shared interests with somebody, just ask them, how do I get started? I knew I really want to do this. How do I do it? And so it's different having somebody open up that way than somebody that's just new and you're not sure quite how to talk to them, because having that same talk with somebody new for the umpteenth time, sometimes, multiple times at the same event, that you're having that talk again, it's an investment, but if you have somebody that's going, hey, I was told to ask you about, making armor. How can I go about getting started? What advice do you have? As soon as you start getting somebody to open up like that, it's easier for you to make a connection.
I've always had this idea that we could have a social mixer at an event, but we would all wear name tags, and mine would say like, "Hi, I'm Riskin. Talk to me about fighting and making cool shit." Mm-hmm. And yours could be like, "Hi, I'm Fabian. Talk to me about fighting and making armor and making stuff happen," or whatever. And then people would actually know what you do, and they would know you were open to maybe fostering a relationship and talking about those things and teaching those things. Because I think it's hard, like, people be like, "Oh, well, go see a Shaxi, she's the Scythian person." Well, it's hard to find her, and then it's hard to say something to her, and it's
Scary.
Just all of these steps, and we're all socially awkward anyway, right?
Yep.
So,
and I've got kids, and it's just, there's a lot to juggle.
In Lockhawk at the Roweny Festival, they have something they call the Laurel Prize. Complete misnomer, has nothing to do with laurels. But what they invite people to do is anybody that's doing any sort of art, anything that they're working on, they are encouraged to come there, put it out, show what they're working on, and other people come by and see it, and you can make the connection, you can give them advice. Now, this is how you work on that, and you have something immediately that you can do together. You can make that connection. And if you see somebody that's, you talk to and you feel that you would get along well, or that they learn the way that you teach, however you want to, put it, then that gives you a chance to make that connection and go forth and just do more on your own. And that is a no stress situation. The only thing I see with the mixer with the name tags is you have to encourage everybody to not be doing anything at that time, being willing to go ahead and be open up to anything that were to happen.
Right.
This is a little bit different spin on it, where you get to go and look at all the cool things that people are doing or attempting, and possibly share some advice and knowledge in the process. So it's a social, interaction in that, where I think that you already have the buy-in of people because they want to see the cool stuff.
Yeah.
So, but something along those lines, I think it's got to be done.
Yeah. What I think is sort of amazing about you is that you experience sort of this hardship, but you have become very, very successful in almost every area of the SCA. And you were talking earlier about how you asked Beck if you would make your cornet, and immediately in my brain, I'm like, so are you always very confident? Like, are you just a very, very confident person, and like you just have a lot of drive?
No, honestly, I have a very odd beginning in the SCA. From probably month one, people were always telling me I was going to be a Duke someday. So there was never a question if, it was just going to happen. So I didn't have to worry about it. There's no stress associated with that. So it just got to be, okay, that's going to happen at some point. We'll find out when. And so I've never, when I was fighting or training, it was never because I wanted to reign or I wanted to become a Duke or anything else, because I really absolutely just enjoy the fighting, trying to figure things out and learn more and just really, figure it out. I never excelled at sports before. I had done all sorts of team sports and individuals, wrestling, football, soccer, bowling, swimming, everything. But I never found anything that really gripped me like this. And so it was just, it's been fun exploring and learning how all of this stuff works. So the armoring was kind of a byproduct of well, I can't afford. We would be around a table at Anton's house and looking at, these pamphlets that you could get from Armor's back in 1987, what you could get. And like, oh my God, this kit that I'm wearing would cost, $650. Who's got that? This is, military, enlisted people and, people working on base. I mean, I was making $3.92 an hour, when I first started, working for APHIS over there. And that was good money because the exchange rate to the mark was like almost 3 marks to the dollar. And so you'd be like living high on the hog. Everything was great. But the thought of coming up with $650 to buy the armor was just not going to happen. So we better figure out how to do this ourselves. And the quality of our stuff was nowhere near what the other people were doing. But we didn't know that, so just try to figure it out.
Right. Okay. Let's look at the pictures again, because you have so many and I would like to get through some of them.
Okay.
So let's do that.
So eventually you connected with Beck and you did kind of find a niche in the West.
Kind of, yes. I became an egg in their fighting unit. At some point you might hatch and become a member of their unit, the Griffins. So the person that started the Griffins, Brandon Arundel, saw me at an event, gave me a pike and told me to go out and do things. And then I was fighting with him ever since. But if they have one person inside the group that doesn't want you to join, they'll never admit you. They'll never make you a member. So I went from being, I think I might have been a squire to Anton at the time when I started fighting with him, but I was squired, got knighted, became a viscount, a count, and a duke, and was still an egg in the Griffins. And at that point decided to give up on it. So, and that's because there was one person, the armor, who had an issue with me. So from what I understand, and again, I understand his point, and so, you don't always make the best initial impressions on people.
And memories in the SCA are long because, it'll be 10 years, but it'll only be like 20 events, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's all good.
Right.
This is Anton. This is probably just before he moved back to the West. I think this is actually the day he's going to get knighted. He got knighted on his way out of the principality.
Those are some sheer tights.
Yes. Did I mention we were having to buy them off the rack?
Yeah, I know. I just.
So, yeah, maybe later you'll ask me about the tight story, but let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
So that's Sir Rame, Viscount Sir Rame on the right, and Gwenllian Rhiannon on the left. You probably know her.
Yeah, we interviewed her. She's amazing.
Oh, she absolutely is. I was there when she won her coronet and was there for her reign with Stefan as her prince consort, and they were just the most inspiring of people. So I felt really privileged to have been around for that. And she smiles the entire time she's fighting. It's amazing. So this is an event. I'm a member of Anton's household, so I'm not squired yet. And you can see the butt of a horse there.
Yes.
There's a German gentleman that's in the middle of the picture in the back. He owned those horses, and he was out doing something on his track next to the event, and he saw us fighting. He goes, "Oh my God, I need somebody to ride my horse in the parade that's coming up." So we went over there. We took turns seeing who would ride the horse in the parade, and then we all took a group photo afterwards.
Very cool.
That was fun. So this picture broke, the frame broke, and I don't know where the original is. I was reaching out to people. So this is Torin on the left, Lugaja O'Neillian, Anton in the middle, myself, and then Percival on the right. Probably just within 6 months of starting the household. And that's Sir Rame's banner off on the side, on the right-hand side. I'm using my mouse cursor, but obviously you don't see that.
Where my cursor is right there. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Black and white and checking. Most of our devices had something to do with black and white, red for a splash of color. I was the rebel and had yellow.
Nice.
There was some sort of Crusader themed event. So we were the Saracens. The diaper that you see us wearing in the red, the tail, you had the triangle in the front with that in the back. For some reason, that was the side designator. So Sir Bear is over on the left-hand side with the big cross swords with the bear in the middle. He's with Rolling Thunder. It was one of the few knights over in Drakkenwald. Oh, you even see the Rolling Thunder sign below my left thigh.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there it is.
What was that?
Yeah, I saw it.
Same event. That's the diapers.
Wow, those are horrible.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was a
That
problem.
poor woman back there.
Yeah, she doesn't look impressed, does she?
No.
So, again, so myself and then Anton. So that was a pair of traveling legs. I had made a pair of aluminum backed legs, so they'd be very light for taking on. Oh my God! And that's a basket hilt. We had problems getting basket hilts because you had to order to the States, and at some point, months later, you might get something in the mail. So that was made with spare parts out of a reject bin that I did just like an hour before a practice.
Wow.
In his backyard. So yeah, do what you have to do. So there's that lady again looking unimpressed. I wish I remembered her name. Percival, myself. That's Terraphon in the blue back there with the orange pants. That was his version of a Saracen, so he didn't have to wear the
diaper.
And Lug. And that was the device of the household device. So anybody that didn't have their own could fight with that. The shield is the black and white check. I've got I think the household device on the top left and my household rank on the bottom left, or top right and bottom left.
I just have to say, for being in so short of a time, I mean, your kit looks incredible. Like, and even like for 1980s, that's a pretty incredible kit.
Yeah.
This was just before when the East was getting face thrusting. They didn't allow face thrusting at Pennsic. They were just instituting it. You had to be authorized in receiving face thrust. And so the visor that I had on that helmet before was too flat, and I was worried about my nose and being cheese grated off. So this one I had built so it would shed blows a little bit easier.
Wow. I
had forgotten about that. So this is months in, maybe the next year in the spring. Sir Axel is Prince here, I believe. So he's Prince of Drakkenwald, probably getting ready to go to Pennsic at some point. This is the largest gathering of fighters I have seen to date, at like 24 fighters, 26 fighters, something like that. I was amazed at the numbers, and I had to marshal because I was the marshal of the local incipient shire. So I was kind of bemused to be marshaling, but somebody in the afternoon after the tournament took over so I could put on kit and go in there and do some melees and pickups with the other guys, which was awesome. So the Axel Travestia is in the back there, the only man I know that can look bashful in armor while fighting. I think it was that event. He was in charge of the other side, and I was the last one left on my side, and I was legged, and I had the audacity call for honorable single combat. And so the other side said, yeah. And I managed to go through their side until only Axel was left. And the entire time he was pacing back and forth saying, this is stupid. This is stupid. This isn't what you do in a melee. So when Percival got back, he just remembered that this is stupid part. And that's Percival, I think, dead on the ground there on the right-hand side. That's Sunnyvale. That is when I visited. That's in the backyard where my sister was renting, and I had just finished the helmet. Drew Fortescue had taken me around to several fighter practices in the area, and I was just getting my kit ready for Pennsic. So, and the fighter practices were amazing. This is at Pennsic. So this is myself and Lord Garth the Lost, who is another one of Raim's squires. Of course, I don't think either of us are squire to him at the moment because we've been released, wearing the Drakkenwald tabards that Axel had provided for us.
Nice.
So I knew I wanted to do something with my hair while I was over there. And I was looking around, and there's a lot of, fashion. The German, had, the German guys and everything else had awesome options over there. I had people that worked for me at the time, and I really didn't want to go and do something drastic with my hair and not feel comfortable about it. So I took a few days off, and I went over to Anton's house, and I got an appointment, and I had the hair done. So the top of that is actually a perm. So there's a tight curly perm on the top, and then it's feathered back. Mikolaj was saying it looks like a mullet in the back, and he was laughing at me today. But this is me just coming to the West, and I worked a couple miles from Mission practice. So this is at Mission College, the strip of grass we used to fight in. You'd back up there and put it on. And since I worked so close, I would just go from work to here, put my stuff on, and be ready for whoever was in armor first or second. So
that's nice, because Mission was quite the practice.
Oh my God, I cannot imagine a better situation to land in. So at the time, Duke Jade was at the top of his game, and it was just amazing watching him. But you would have, 3, 4, 5 other Dukes there, and you'd have, 20 knights, Viscounts and everything else, and you'd have, 30 or 40 unbelts, there as well, many nights. And I felt privileged as hell because Jade was also into fighting and kind of like that stuff. And I would get there and fight him. And eventually we got to the point where we wouldn't take each other's time in the beginning. We'd kind of look, okay, later on, let me know when you're ready. And then we'd go ahead and just have set after set after set. And, as many as he wanted to give me, I would take. And notice I'm not wearing any armor there. So what I had decided very purposefully is every time I was getting hit, that I wasn't blocking something with armor, and it didn't hurt. I had good armor there. I would ditch the armor. I didn't have any incentive to block it because it didn't hurt. So I just want to get rid of all of the stuff. And so now I cared about learning how to block all the stuff and doing everything I could to really understand what was happening, because you had to in the middle of the fight to not get hit.
How did your fighting style change when you moved to the West and you were getting all of this ducal fighting at the Mission practice?
That's interesting. Before I came to the West, Ian and Charité were Prince and Princess of Drachenwald. And Ian had come from the West. And I'm like, over here, I kind of know where I am in the pecking order. But I had no idea where I'd land in the West. And he says, you'll do fine, in the West. Just remember that you don't know everything. And and I talked to Anton and some others about that afterwards. And I was having fun with everybody, and I thought I was having playful banter. But I was told that sometimes I would come across as, hey, do you want to play? You're not going to win, but we'll have fun anyway. Sort of a thing. And I had no idea that I was coming across that way, and I was mortified. So I had made it a point when I came here, to ask people if they had seen anything in my fighting that, I could work on or improve, or that they saw, that need to be fixed. And in the beginning, it was a kind of a rote, is there anything in my fighting? I didn't have the heart in it, didn't really think about it because, you're fighting somebody that you don't really feel that is, kind of equal, or maybe that you're better than. I didn't expect anything, but it was the thing I was supposed to ask people. So I was just doing it. And then one day at a BART practice, this guy who hadn't really given me any challenge, turned and he gave me, said, I wasn't able to take advantage of it, but I noticed that you're doing this, that, and the other. And I think that a better fighter would have been able to take advantage of it. And I think if you'd done this instead, it'd work better for you. And, jaw on the floor. It is just one of those things like, oh my God, thank you very much for that piece of advice. And it became wholeheartedly endorsed after that, just realizing, it's just not the top end fighters that can give you the advice that can be really helpful, but it can be, just the average person. To that end, even after I was at Duke, I had gone and talked to Duke Paul, and I wanted to learn his Florentine style. I'd already won a crown at that point with Florentine, but Paul was fighting a much different style, and I just never felt comfortable with it. Having that wide open stance, your sword's out. It's like, why aren't you getting creamed? Why isn't somebody just like just taking you down the center line, just doing bad things to you? So I really wanted to figure that out, and I had approached Paul about learning. He goes, you know what? I think a better person for you to talk to would be Kat. She understands my style better than anyone else. So why don't you talk to her and see and if she can help you? He was being very gracious, wasn't brushing me off, but she lived closer to me, and so I wouldn't have to take the long drive to him all the time. So like, sure. So I reached out to Kat, who was a lady that wasn't able to fight anymore because of her knees. And I didn't really see her around at SE events. I just knew him as having been with Paul. I'm not sure if she was a squire or not. But started meeting up with her at Bart, and I did more training with her than I have with anybody else. So she didn't have any fighting awards, hadn't been winning tournaments or anything else, but she understood fighting and she could dissect things. So as I was doing a fight, she'd call out, no, more of this or do that. After the fight, she'd go over and maybe figure out what needed to be done, and I'd go back out there and do it. And everybody thought I was crazy at Bart practice. Like, oh my God, you're a Duke. Why are you out here training? For something new with her. I mean, it's just, why are you doing that? There's something to learn, and she has the skills that I need. And I've just fully embraced that.
I love that because one of the things I think a lot of the Dukes that don't fight anymore feel like is that they don't have anything to offer anymore. And just because you can't fight anymore does not mean you do not have stuff to teach.
I haven't been able to fight for 5 years. I'm still hoping to get on the path to healthfulness that will allow me to do it. But I feel a huge disconnect sometimes when I go to fight to tournaments and stuff like that. I feel almost like I don't belong. So I totally get, some of the people that are retired. I don't feel I'm ready to be retired, but I can understand somebody that has no longer able to do it.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to go and not be able to do it. I think that is really hard, but I don't think that you don't have anything to offer anymore if you can't do it. And I'm not talking to you personally. I'm just.
I know. Yeah.
So, anyway. Oh, we get a better look at the front.
Oh my God. Oh, that's Drew Fortescue behind me, underneath my elbow.
Oh, cool.
He's the guy that actually got me started. Took me around to all the fighter practices, took me to his shop. The first guy I've ever got a chance to actually armor with in his shop. It was awesome. And he won Cornet while I was away. That's his Viscount Sir Sagan von Ostensee and His Excellency Gersten Haley. So Sagan, met him at a crown. I had gone to late round fights with Drew Fortescue, and he's a lefty. I didn't have a lot of experience fighting lefties except for Gwen. And so I was fighting pickups with him on Sunday. And Sagan came over and started giving him pointers on how to fight me. And it was kind of a bugaboo of mine because I was used to, when I was over in Drachenwald, everybody getting together and telling each other, trying to figure out how to beat me. And so I didn't have anybody coming in and giving me the advice. And so I turned to him and said, okay, hey, what about me? You got any advice for me? He stopped and looked at me, looked me up and down. He goes, yeah, this, that, and the other. I'm like, thank you. I appreciate that. And didn't think anything of it. And he actually went and contacted my knight and asked if it was okay if he trained me. And you were asking a little while ago of how my fighting changed over there. And that, man, is the reason that the fighting changed. I had, was fighting with a Drachenwald longsword, the fish bat that's, 22 inches long or so, and a big heater when I first got over here. And that wasn't working out so well when you got legged and they were in a different zip code and reining the shots in. And so I'd gone to a small heater because I wasn't willing to get, westernized and fight with a bunny round. So I had a little tiny heater, but trying to figure out how to block my legs, I was doing this really exaggerated stance, trying to get that really low, and which meant I really couldn't move or anything else, very limited. So he took me over to his, invited me to his backyard after he talked to my night, and he had a conversation with me on the phone. He got my home number and we talked a little bit, and he ended up inviting me to his backyard. And that's where I got introduced to videotaping and analyzing fighting. But more importantly, he just really got me to think about fighting differently. He puts on armor and is against me the first time we were ever going to lay swords on each other. He gets in there and goes, okay, get in your stance. He got in front of me and he had his shield around his knee. His shield was down. His sword was on his shoulder. And he goes, okay, I want you to hit me. I'm like, what? Yeah, go ahead, hit me. And I'm like, you're not going to get in stance? No, go ahead. And he goes, go ahead, fast as you can. I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, old man, I'm going to cream you, sort of thing. So I get back in stance and I take the shot and I try to, cleave his head in two. And he casually just went ahead and slowly stepped off to the side and kind of moved himself out. And my sword went flying right by him. It's okay, go ahead, do it again. Just gets in stance, the same thing. He's not even bothered, trying to block anything. And I'm getting up, I'm trying to do the fastest shot I possibly can. And he just casually sidesteps it. And I'm just like, mind's blown. He goes, yeah, speed kills, not your opponent, but you. All I need to do is know when you're throwing that shot. You can't modify it or do anything else. It's a fire and forget. So I just need to go ahead and just know when to slide out of the way, and I can take you anytime I want. And so when he slid off across the side, the second part of that, he was just laying his sword right across my grill. So I'm just like looking at this thing right in my face. Like, holy shit. What kind of Jedi mind trick shit is this? And that was the beginning. I only think I ever got about 5 sessions of training with him, and the entire time he was here before he ended up moving and just, timing and everything else. But really getting me eventually to really understand the fighting, the entire dance, and what else it can be, and understanding, body mechanics and what somebody can do from a certain position. So we would do, the, what's next sort of drills. You throw a shot, what else can you do? Where can it go? Where are you protected? What do you have to do to block it? And all those other things. And so I don't think I ever got out of his basic beginner level of fighter training. He didn't necessarily start with beginners. He'd take people that were already intermediate fighters, but he just had a reputation of taking an intermediate fighter and just making him one of the best. So
he's amazing.
And Gerst in Sarana had just an amazing house that impacted just tons of people as well. During the first reign, he became our the night counselor for the royalty. So he was giving us advice on how to do things and what to, basically how to reign better. It was just kind of amazing. That's the first finals I had ever been in with Jade. So as I told you, I was just going and eating up anything he would ever do, taking the chance to fight him anytime. I'd show up to a practice, I'd be there, and people would be leaving him alone because he was in a bad mood. He had a bad day of work. So nobody wanted to get near him. I'd like, touchdown, more for me. And so just go out there and we'd fight. And, after fighter practice, usually we'd have to go over to Bennigan's by 9:30 or 10. You try to get over to Bennigan's to get anything ordered that you might want because they close the food down. But frequently we would have people, we would send them there first and say, okay, order this for us, get us a drink, whatever else, we'll be over there when we can. And we'd be over there for sometimes hours afterwards. There were times that we were under the only street, all the lights go off, except there was this one light on the corner of a trash enclosure that would stay on late. And we would go under that one light and fight and fight and fight. There were times 2 or 3 in the morning and we're still out there fighting. So, I got to get up and work the next morning. Let's go ahead and call it a night. So I had one of the biggest lessons I ever learned about fighting was from Jade and Sagan. In a previous crown, we met in the mid rounds, and I had been working on an offside body and trying to figure out the mechanics, how Jade was doing it, and had practiced it for a long time. And he finally started coming. I was feeling good about it. And we met in the list at one point, and he legged me and we're fighting, and I hit him with an offside body, and he continued fighting. I legged him, and eventually he killed me. And so I go off to the side, not thinking anything of it. You know, I just happy that I had a good series of exchanges with him. He came over and he says that, hey, some of the people in my group are telling me that, you know, our fight didn't look clean, that, you know, that you may have landed a blow on me that I didn't take. I'm like, and I was like, and he goes, well, so like this offside body, you know, what did you think? I said, well, you know, you're the one in the army. How did it feel to you? And he's like, you know, I'm asking you what you felt. And I'm like, I don't know. You're in the army. You need to tell me, you know, what it is. And Sagan came over and he says, Fabian, what he's saying is, what was the first thought that went through your mind when you landed that blow? Well, honestly, at the time, I thought I had you. And Jay goes, okay, fine. The fight's yours. I'll go ahead and have the fight reversed with the list field, the list mistress. I'm like, that doesn't feel right. You know, can we just go ahead and have a refight instead? And he goes, I can't offer that. You have to talk to the king for that. But that's not something that I can do. And I said, okay. So I went over and talked to His Majesty and told him the situation. And His Majesty told me I was a fool and to take the win. And I'm like, yeah, you know, Your Majesty, that really doesn't sit well with me. Can we do a refight instead? And he goes, yes, by all means, go ahead and have a refight, but I think you're a fool. And went ahead and refought, and Jade won and went off and won that tournament. And the rest of the story is a couple years later, he got a copy of that fight from that crown. And obvious, you know, when I was looking back at it, had learned enough about body mechanics and everything else. When I was looking at it, it's like, yeah, there's no way that shot was good. I completely missed the delivery on that. There's no way that could have been a good shot on there. So, you know, I'm glad that he had taken the shot back, and I'm glad that I had asked for a refight instead, because there's always going to be a question, you know, when these things happen. So huge lesson learned. So this is the finals with him, 92, I think, on that. And I was just happy that I think this ended up being like the best out of 5 finals for that. And then the first one that I'd gone to.
Did you make the helmet that you're wearing there?
Yeah.
Beautiful lines on that.
Oh, thank you. That was the first lei I ever made from scratch.
It's very pretty.
Thank you. And that's me taking a break between there. I've got my company in St. George pennant. That's in the back there. They've done some silk screening on that. So this is me stepping up as prince. I was convinced to fight in investiture by Mistress Tatiana. She kept working on me to pass my device because she didn't want me to see me winning anything before I had advice passed. But she convinced me to fight in for the principality.
Cornet,
thank you. And it was just, I just can't believe it, but it was embarrassing. But she says, imagine in the future, you know, when you're looking back at your career and you've got, you know, your knighting scroll and, you know, your county scroll and your ducal scroll, and there's this spot over here where your viscounty should have been. And, you know, I don't think that's exactly what sold me on having to do it. But enough people have been telling me that it'd probably be a good thing to get some experience. Because at that point, maybe 22, you know, in there, you know, somewhere in that thing. And so I had wanted to find somebody that had some experience that knew this, because I was still really new in the West and didn't know everybody. So Viscountess was I had reigned before in the mist and was single. And so I talked to her about just having a reigning arrangement. I figured it was going to be the absolute perfect thing. She had all the experience. Her mom was Ellis, who knows and does everything. So what more could you ever ask? Except for some fashion sense. I obviously had.
I think you look good.
Yeah, I mean,
especially for that. I mean, everybody there looks really good.
So you don't see the cuffs on that thing. These huge long linen things that I had dyed, and it's just, okay. That's much better than some of the other ones. Okay.
So I have a question. Is this after you finaled with Jade? Did you win Cornet
Yes.
after? Yeah.
My thing is, why become prince when you can become king? And that was my whole spiel. Why do it? Why step back and be prince? And basically, they convinced me that would be a good idea. I'm so thankful they did.
Well, it's one of the cool things about the West is that you have those two principalities right there, and you guys can sort of have a training ground to learn how to reign before you don't have a safety net under you, right?
Absolutely.
So you're knighted here too. Was your and who were you squire to? I'm sorry, I don't think we ever.
Anton. I was knighted to squire to Anton at the time, but Anton ended up going over to Desert Storm. He got deployed over there during that. So during the knighting ceremony, Sagan stepped in.
Okay, cool. Was your knighting a surprise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had just started the Squires Union.
Squires Union?
So we had the Squires Union. We had our first meeting on the Eric, and we had it opposite of the Knight Council, so we could do our gesticulations and everything else while they were sitting in their council. And our whole first agenda was we don't want to do dishes anymore, and just having fun with it. And it worked out that the meetings break apart. We have two people come over here, and basically they told me His Majesty, needs to talk to you. I'm like, oh my God, am I in trouble for this whole Squires Union thing? Instead they were union busting, and they decided to knight me instead. So they didn't. The Squires didn't hold it against me, by the way. They made me an honorary squire for life. And they went and they put me on vigil out of lake, and I got dressed and sat on a cement bench and listened to no shit stories and advice from knights for the next couple hours. And then they went to bed, and next morning got up and got knighted. So
who was the king that knighted you?
Jade.
That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, the cuffs are quite something.
They were, yeah. And this perm, okay, I had a really nice haircut in Germany. I liked it. I think it was stylish. They couldn't do it here. And when I got it permed by somebody that was in the Griffins, and then I went back to have it redone. And when I told her I wanted a perm, she had thought I just wanted a trim. And she says, oh my God, sure. So she puts all the chemicals in, puts it on, and then she goes and does her next customer. And she'd come back and check to see how everything was going. She let the chemicals in for more than half an hour, in there. And so my hair was basically fried and lip. And so I was either going to shave it off and be bald or try to just let it grow out. And it was really horrible at that point. So this is the middle of that, crap-tastic.
It looks really cute.
Thank you. See how everything at the top is flat because it was all dead? Yeah, okay. I'll take it.
We get to look at it from every angle.
I'm sure I have something in my eye there. Someone today said I look like Bueller there, and I'll never not be able to see that.
You do a little bit.
So that's a Waffenrock I made.
Oh, you made it?
Yeah, for stepping down.
So I always just assumed that you were a laurel for armor making, but is it more of a multifaceted laurel?
I believe so. I don't think it was ever, stipulated, at the time, but pretty much wanted to do everything.
Well, the Waffenrock is lovely.
Thank you.
What arts were you doing when you got laureled?
I had been doing a lot of silk painting and dyeing, doing the leather working, making leather pants, so Beck was the first one around here making leather pants, and I got on that bandwagon and started doing it and teaching people how. And I had taught some classes on how to make the silk painted banners and pennants. Was probably one of the early ones around here anyway that was trying to push that. And then the armoring and stuff in there as well. I'd done shoes, I'd done hose, I'd done my own gloves at one point. That the scabbard on the sword is one that I had done. So just trying to do everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Well, for the women on the West Coast Kingdoms, we thank you and Beck for the leather pants.
Beck looks better. Oh my God. So bad perm still coming out. See this, my life is not done there. So this means it's probably just after the rain. And we were at the airport trying to get a ride to site, and everything was going to be super expensive. And this limo driver came and undercut everybody else. And so like, you bet. And so we packed everything up. We had the pole arms and everything else sticking out of the trunk. We had all the armor stacked in the middle with our feet on top of it. Got him to stop at a place that we could get some cold beer. And so we were able to drink in the back and have a good time. And we were feeling no pain by the time we got to site. So
Nice.
And I have no idea what is up with those pants. So
they're very 70s.
So that's Dan, who was my shop help at the time. And then Keith and the Undecided, Jocelyn, and then Brian Thornburg. Brian Thornburg at this point had moved in with me. I'd gone down to LA, helped him pack up his shop and bring everything up. And we were living together and combined shops for a while in Hayward. And then me with the bad hair. First Crown Finals I won. So the second one I was in. And that's Viscount Colin DeBray that I'm fighting at that point. So.
Do you have something that you do to mentally prepare yourself for tournaments?
No. So what I do before fighting in tournaments. So one of the things that I think has really helped me is I am able to go ahead and get to a nice, deep, low-level meditation. So I look at everything and nothing. I don't pre-think anything I'm doing when I'm fighting. I don't, have a series of stuff that I want to do out there. I just go out there and read my opponents, and the fight evolves based upon what they're giving me. Because, and so when I get in a deep enough focus, the final part of my focus is the salute to my lady. And so everything is kind of a low level burn throughout the entire day. And then as I'm going out to the field, I'm feeling the grass under my feet. I'm feeling my breathing, and I slow everything down. I always make sure I get to the field first, and I want to watch my opponent coming out of the field. So I'm watching how they're walking. I look at their armor, where they might have problems feeling shots, or the ways they may not be able to move. I look at how long their sword is, how they're holding it, how their shield is strapped. And I'm just taking in all this information, watching them walk onto the field. And then, go through all the salutes, and everything is just, feeling, the breathing in and out. And it's just, and then as you go down, every time, it just helps take you a little bit deeper and deeper into that focus. And I don't even have to really think during the fights. It's just whatever's coming naturally. If there have been fights where new shots just happen because it's what's required at the time in a certain position, and the opening's over there, and all of a sudden something happens, and I have to figure out later, like, what the hell was that? How did I throw that shot? I have to go back and analyze it, on the tape. But having done enough PEL work and enough training, not practice, but training, doing these things, that you can take a shot from anywhere to anywhere, whether you're standing, left forward, right forward, horse stance, no matter what you've got in your hand, you got to be able to throw a shot from anywhere to anywhere.
When you make the distinction between practice and training, are you talking about like doing slow work and your PEL work and drills?
No, that's not training. So that's just kind of fun, happy time. I don't know. Just training to me is when you're physically actively working on something specific, okay. Whether you have somebody that is leading that training or not, whether you're basically trying to figure out, there are so many things that can go into the training, and we can do a section on that if you want.
I might have you back to talk about that, because it sounds like you have some interesting things to say.
Okay, be happy to.
All right. It's Nate.
So you had mentioned that you don't have a lot of time right now with your job.
Yeah.
So during this time, this was during a time in my life where I had no time, but was making good money. So I was in the middle of 12-hour shifts, mandatory 12-hour shifts that happened here, and got off work at 7 in the morning, drove to site, had to ask permission of the Crown to enter because I may have to leave before if the tournament drags on. So I had a very specific, I have to leave by this time. And so the entire tournament, I'm watching everything going. And when things started dragging, there was an open field. I'd go and offer to help ferry cards over there so we could open up the other field to get them caught up. Pretty much anything I could do, because I kept watching, the time getting closer and closer to leaving. And I remember him needing breaks between fights. And I was just kind of looking and counting down the minutes, just doing mental calculations if I'm going to be able to make it to work or I'm going to have to get a write-up for being late. So yeah, it was interesting. One of the people I wish I had seen him reign. Colin and Keegan were just fantastic, amazing people, and never had that opportunity. I think he finaled 3 times, and this was the 3rd one he had done.
Wow.
So fighting for Kinswith. I had been dating her for a while and had broken up with her the week before Crown. Told her that every reason that I would ever want to reign with her as a consort was still absolutely valid. I would love to do it. So we decided to go ahead and continue and proceed. The entire time, she was, her phrase was that she would always say that she's a terrible girlfriend. You need to find someone better for you. And at one point, we just decided, okay, let's try that then. But I still wanted to fight for her because I was that inspired by her. So came out here, won Crown, and we had some amazing court members that just went out of their mind, making the big swallowtail banners. I think we had 8 of those things, with all the different charges and everything. And big mistake, fighting for somebody that sews that level of clothing and costuming and breaking up with her the week before is that she no longer felt the need to sew for me. So I had to talk to Mari and convince Mari that she could help me. And what Kinswith wanted turns out being very expensive because those are, there's multiple layers. That's, period layers of stuff. There's inner coats that have the sleeves with different dags on them, and the outer coats with the trains have different dag patterns and all the, you never know if you'll ever do this again. So the collar, the collar I had made and designed, her belt there was done with the fittings and castings that I had designed and put together. Alithia of Three Oaks was an amazing jeweler. I'd seen her the week before I won. She had been at a booth at some event, and I had seen a horn tip that she had done. I'm like, this is fantastic. I haven't seen these. Where did you find it? She goes, oh, I made it. I'm like, really? Is this like lost wax casting? She goes, oh yeah. And I had asked her at that point if she'd ever thought about doing anything, period. And she goes, no, most people, can't afford it or don't want to pay the money for it. And I got in her card, didn't think anything of it. And then when I won, I'm like, and Kinswith wanted this garb. I'm like, well, shit, I need something to go with it. A white knight's belt's not going to go. And so just, these plaques, these silver plaques, those are, heavy silver plaques on mine with etched things in there that we made. And her was all just, that is the nicest, but you can't see the back of it, but that is the nicest hoop belt I've ever seen.
I think there is a picture of the back, but you can see all the dags and the layers on this. These are outstanding. So you never know if you're going to do it again. So I had period rings made. We were giving those things away as gifts and thank yous. We had members on the court, Nikki and Morgan, who were falconers. So I carried a red tail into court. She got a kestrel, processing with those things. It was just absolutely phenomenal and amazing. Could not have asked for a better group of people to help out with the reign. I love that your retinue is doing the red, black, and white too. That's they were all inspired, and Kinswith is like that. Yeah, she just inspires people. So there's the back. The buckle is just the way that the belt's tied. You can't even see the keeper on the buckle in there, but it's as period as I could design it. Very cool. It's a very expensive habit. I was paying her monthly payments for a while, paying off that jewelry debt.
My first time holding the great sword of state, it's kind of a surreal moment. You see it and it's just this phenomenal thing to actually be holding it with something else. This is getting ready for Christian Duglave's ducal ceremony, I believe.
Very cool.
Just the happy times. So that Dag surcoat, Kinsmith and I ended up getting back together during the rain, and everything was fantastic. And she ended up making that surcoat for me, which she might have made that before we broke up. I can't remember, but that was just the most amazing surcoat. And she just hates doing them because of all the dags and the work that goes into them.
They sure look great when you're moving, when you're fighting, all the movement in the fabric. It's just amazing.
I stopped wearing it in crowns or in tournaments because I was told that when the arms are out, the dags can impede the sword blows, so it can slow them down. And so I was told the first term I ever fought with it, that it might be an unfair advantage, which was disappointing. So between the first rain and second rain, I had an industrial accident. My foot was crushed. And so I spent a year pretty much not walking. I was on crutches the entire time. And it did none of my guard fit afterwards because I wouldn't slow down. I was still trying to go to San Francisco and go up and down hills and not work very cast. And my chest measurements, I think I got 8 or 9 inches on my chest just that first year from this. A few weeks before Crown, I had been released to start walking without the walking boot, and then graduated to without needing the walking boot. And in this tournament, this is the first time I'm going to come back and fight. And at the practice, to see if I could do it, went out and fought, and it was just exceedingly painful, but I was told I wasn't going to do any more damage to it. So I would only be able to have like one step with my right foot. So I'd get in stance and I'd kind of limp forward one step and do a follow-up step. And I had to end the fight at that point because I was pretty much out of, anything to do. So doing the tournament, limited mobility, just trying to figure out ways of making it happen. And then Venuman hits me in the foot, in the right foot. I think I was on the ground at the time and my foot's back, and he tried doing a deep shot and it hit me right in the side of the bad foot. And it was just one of those things that made me want to throw up. So we're taking a break in between rounds and trying to walk it off and see if I can actually continue or not. So the other fun thing about that story in there is that I had to ask permission from Juana, who was the page mistress for the Kingdom newsletter. Kins was supposed to step down that morning, but we had it pushed off into the evening court so I could fight for her first, because they figured, gimpy guy can't do anything, right? Let him be cute, go out there and fight a little bit. And after finals, I think we heard Juana scream because she was toasty. She was done. She didn't want this. She couldn't have this anymore. And we had to have the autocrat step in and become do the page for us while we reigned until Kins was able to pick it up and do it. So definitely another one of my icons, Radnor of Gildemar. The guy is just so the epitome of grace and fluidity of movement. If you've ever seen him fighting, it's just nothing's ever more graceful. Steve Beck is amazing to fight, and one of my most fun fights. He has the amazing ability to ask somebody who they trained with, and he has this index. He'll catalog and figure out. He'll know what sort of things, where you live, who you've trained with. You do these things. This is how I should fight you. I'll fight this style because you do this thing. I was having fun with him because we would start in one style. He would respond with something else, and so I'd morph into a different style. And we would go back and forth in one exchange that's fluid, no stops or anything else. The styles are palpably changing from one to the other. And it's just, and of course he's laughing and shucking it up while we're fighting. It's just so much fun. Me again, second reign. This is the stuff. I actually stepped down in the Germans, and I didn't make either of those things. Those things I had made for me. But we were those are the for the Crown Prince and Princess, the cornets that we're obviously not wearing there.
Was she wearing your belt in that last photo?
Yeah, I just noticed that before. She liked my belt a lot, so she'd rather wear that than her hoop lined one. Because that's not a hoop. That's Rain one step up. Probably me getting my duchy at this point. Again, I didn't bother getting a ducal coronet because, by all rights, Steve was going to make me one.
And he did, right?
Eventually, yeah. I went a couple of years without a ducal coronet because, the one I wanted was from Beck. If he ever got a check round to it, that'd be great.
Nice.
Company St. George, probably doing, getting ready to do the tenons and venons entrance of the pot of arms. So I had figured out silk screening. So stepping up second time with Kinswith, more fabulous costuming. I'm dating her this time, so I didn't have to pay anybody. Venuman is a friend of mine. I love Venuman to death. And when I have people I've offered peerages to, I have them write their peerage ceremony. This is before everything was standardized, but even after then, this is their one chance. I want to make sure it's special for them. So I said, give them the opportunity to write a ceremony. Let me know what he wants. I'll look it over, and as long as it contains everything, we'll go ahead and do it. In his ceremony, it had a line that the king will now deliver a powerful, perhaps even astonishing blow to Venuman's cheek. If he's conscious afterwards, we will all be disappointed. Or if he's coherent afterwards, we'll all be disappointed. I'm like, Venuman, what are you saying here? What? And he goes, I have very comprehensive medical insurance. There's nothing you can do that we can't fix.
Oh,
Jeez.
It just, that was what was important to him. And we didn't do anything that was going to maim him, making sure that you don't hit any of the bad zones, but gave him a significant buffet. But, doesn't look like I like him, in that picture. It looks like I've just, he's drank my milkshake or something.
So for perspective, Your Grace, when Rifkin's husband was given the buffet, he lost all sense of time and his memory, and it took months for him to get back to normal.
And it was one of his best friends too, but it was just a mistake.
So I don't think that you have to have a machismo when you're getting your buffet. I've had one where he wanted the kiss of peace instead. Okay, that's what he wants. That's what's important in his ceremony. By all means, let's do that.
I love that.
This is over in Lockhawk, the Roni Festival. Like the mesh is underneath the grill of the Soleil. You couldn't have anything exposed. In fact, they even make you wear gloves. But that mesh was so hard to put on and off. I just kept it on the entire tournament. Made it hard to get the chin strap on, but so be it. They have the coolest thing with their to raise money for the principality. They do what they call the fighter auction during the Roni tournament, which is kind of like their Penzic, but it's all medieval, and it's just the best tournament I've ever been to. I've been to several of them, hands down, place I'd always go back to. But they have usually a tavern in there where they'll have, I think they had like 60 kegs of Strombo cider that they had delivered one of the years I was there, and they just have the kegs out and they put boards over them. That becomes the benches to sit on. And then they'll go around tapping the kegs, trying to figure out the next full one to swap out when they need to swap them out. But they use that as a social center. So they will go ahead, and they had, I think, 130 fighters some odd one year when I was there. And so they have to auction off all those fighters. And the people that win the bid become your patron for the tournament. So whatever you win, they get their pick of the prizes. You get to fight. If you wanted to sponsor yourself, you pay for your own entry fee, and you can take the prize yourself. But it was always more fun to have patrons. And then the higher tier fighters would have consortiums that would get together and pull their money and try to outbid the other one so they could have their fighter. And it just became a fun thing to do.
That's a great way for non-fighters to be able to participate in tournaments.
And it's a great way for top level fighters to enter a high level tournament without having the repercussion of a reign at the end.
Yeah. Oops.
Foot crushed, a year, come back, start fighting. The foot never healed. because they found the problems way too late. So I had to have a foot fusion where they cut out a bunch of stuff, put stuff in, and stapled it all together. So I spent a year kind of as the doorstep to the kingdom. So when I got back to able to fight, you know, just they would kill me, step over my dead body, and take the throne. But I had started dating Bryn just before the day before my surgery. We stayed up all night talking, and then sent me off to surgery and to recovery and stuff after that. But we started dating afterwards, and this is my first opportunity to try to win Bryn a rose in the Tournament of the Roses during Crown. They had opened it up to boffer fighting. I'm like, I can do boffer fighting. I can't do heavy stuff yet, but I can do boffer. So I figured I'll go ahead and do a boffer thing. So this kid lines up against me. There were a lot of things I didn't understand about boffer fighting that you could do. You can do that. That was the standard phrase of mine during these fights. You know, we'd line off, and I don't want to just, you know, go off and abuse the kids. I mean, oh, we're going to have a fun time. Let's have a set. Let's be cute. And he would do something, and I go, whoa, you can do that? Goes, oh, yeah. And the marshal goes, yeah, you can do that. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I'd ask him who to take the rose to, and it was his dog. I had to deliver roses to this dog because he didn't have anything else. At the end of the day, the dog had several roses around his watering dish before he ever delivered one to Bryn. But it was the sweetest rose that I think I ever got delivered, because I had to work harder for this than anything else. His dog.
That's awesome.
So reigning with Bryn, another just inspiring queen. Couldn't ask for any better.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah, people would tell me they liked me, but they really liked Bryn. So, that was Connor, by the way, in the bottom right. So we have, you know, so when we were reigning, he went out and made sure he won cornet so we could reign together. That quite a bit. Shaheen, I was on her guard when I first came over here. I was around the kingdom for about a year before I was knighted. So I had the opportunity to be on one guard. And when I was put on the guard, I went and fought in the Queen's Tournament, won the Queen's Tournament, and so became the Queen's Champion tournaments, became her champion. And then we went and had adventures in Japan for about a month as they did Royal Progress over there. She and Jay, and about 8 of us went over there and had a great time. So when Brian and Shahina became Prince and Princess, I'm like, of course I'm going to go and try to become her champion again. So this was the culmination of that. Another inspiring queen. And another dream, getting a chance to fight another one of my icons, Duke Radnor, in finals. An earlier round fight, he and I had squared off. And he's one of those guys that's so amazingly, blindingly fast. You just never know exactly what's coming. You just have to be ready for anything and nothing. In fact, the way I describe it is you have to open yourself up and feel his intent. And so you just have to feel where he's going. Because if you see it coming somewhere, it's too late. You have to kind of just do a motion, and then your sword gets hit, because that's where he happened to be going to. In the round, during the rounds, he had beaten me. We had been in stance, and this is after I had done the training with Kat. And I picked up Paul style this time. And when we got to finals, I'm like, okay. Oh, I didn't finish. So we get in stance and just waiting for him, you know, to try to figure out how we're going to do the opening salvo, because we tried doing the shots, but I'm trying to find the way that I can do a shot and then pull myself into the fight, get within range, and start the flow. And in that time, Radnor did something and killed me, and I had no idea what the hell he'd done. I hadn't seen a sword blow. I like blinked and I was hit, and then I fell down on the ground. Watched video of it afterwards, and as I need to find out what the hell he did. I don't know what he did, but I never saw it. I'm in stance, getting ready to fight him. That's not okay. And we're getting ready. We can see us posturing. Everything's getting ready. The tension's building up. He's getting ready to throw the shot. Somebody walks in front of the camera, and they walk in front of the camera. Then you see me on the ground. Oh. He's back in his stance the way he was right before. You know, boom, it hit me. It came back, and I never had any clue of what it was that he did. We talked about it afterwards. We were able to dissect what he was able to do. But so now we're in finals. You can imagine Florentine, somebody that fast and good. And it was just a thing of beauty. I could not have ever imagined fighting. Both he and Jade have the ability to raise up the level of your fight. Jade will do it that you have to meet his will, and it's this crush of wills, and you raise up together. If not, you're trampled underfoot. Radnor does it by kind of pulling you up. He'll go ahead and just fight just a little bit above you, a little bit above you, a little bit above you, and you pull up. And then by the time you realize it, you're doing the best fighting of your life. Doing things you never thought was possible, and it's just a gift that he's got.
That's a really cool picture. The intensity is just amazing.
So that one was actually a break in the middle. We were talking about something, and so we had been back fighting, and then we paused and kind of, there was no lay on. This is kind of gentleman's agreement. Just whenever we were chatting and talking, and like, okay, we're ready. Let's do this thing. They started playing Hurley out here, and so I think Fionn, Master Fionn, who started Rabbitfoot Meadery, had some relatives that were able to ship us stuff. And so they had started doing Hurley. I saw it and said, I want to do that. And so I started joining in and doing it. And it was a blast. We did it at West Antier a few times. And this is at the Sheep Ranch, probably a Beltane. People started getting a little bit sore when we were playing the game through their pavilions and camps. And, the ball would get hit and roll through. And it's hard to get enough space to have a full Hurley pitch. So I think that kind of came to an early death because of that, but fun times.
I very much enjoyed that era of Hurley playing, shirtless Hurley playing. It was excellent.
Absolutely. So the Crapode tournament that's been going on monthly, that's currently still going on because of Echariah and Josh are keeping it going. This was the last time that it was held at Ob's house up in Calusa. And so everybody that was there at the event signed the commemoration as it was being transferred to somewhere else. So absolutely magical time. That's Ellie and her sister Steffi. We were doing they were doing portraits at 12th night, come and get us. And Ellie and I were doing a portrait, and Steph didn't have anything to pose with, so she just kind of came in, leaned in, said, I'll do it too. And we just, okay, here we are. We're having a great time in the Germans. I wish I had tights on under that. It's just
probably hot in the hotel.
it was something. Yeah. So again, that first finals, it might not even be a different finals with Jed. I had, no, the DAG stuff, that's the first one. I ended up going to finals with him a couple of times. So good times. Fighter auction over in Roni again. And Duke Felix sent this to me when I was getting starting to post pictures, trying to get this together. And he circled it back in the back that's the 12-year-old self. That's him at 12 years old watching this and telling me what a life changer it was, watching me doing that day. That, which is super humbling. That
is super humbling.
He came out here visiting Mark. So Evie was coming to visit Mark. They were Night Squire. And I had a chance to do some pickups with him at Bart. When I had gone out to Lockhawk for La Prova out there, he hadn't fought me at all. He had been standing up when other people had the opportunity to fight me to make sure they got something out of it. And I kept hoping I'd get a chance to cross swords with him, and never did on that trip. But out here, when I took him up there for him to meet Radnor, we got a chance to do it. And that was after my car accident, but I was able to, fight him a lot. And that was actually the last practice I've been at. So Duke Connor, one of my squires, just hell of a guy. It's fun doing training sessions with him, doing, training the squires, the households, sometimes combined households, doing trainings, especially when with Mari and Havek. So that's at a Great Western War, just having a moment with him.
Cool.
Saluting Alishka and carrying her favor at this point. So I learned how to silk screen so I didn't have to paint my device, which made it possible. I just have silk screens. I can just go ahead and, when I do it, I can do a couple shields at a time, do extra squares for circuits, call it good. Bram McClellan, one of the best polearmsmen, that's I've ever faced.
Yep.
These guys have an amazing and fun fight. Me at Great Western, fighting with Alishka. That's her on the buff coat, her heart and the wings on my leg.
Oh, that's cool.
So I had the Kingdom arms cut out in the back of that. just trying to figure out something I could do with the Germans. Training with Dietrich, the Prince of Huerta. Pickups, you got to be the first one out on the field, last one off. So that's Xander, my son, and Ellie. So that's when he's 15 months old at that point, I think. And then Connor on the left and myself. That's the buff coat from behind. Lady Sorsha, Mistress Sorsha, made actually helped coordinate getting that banner made. They're trying to get me the information on who actually made the banner. It was a conspiracy that was up in Huerta around that time. Went up there to get authorized in rapier so I could lead the rapier field as a surprise. So I was able to lead the forces onto the field. So this is Viola gifting me with my own rapier. When I asked what weapons I could borrow because I don't have any, they had done a collection and gifted me one, which was amazing and awesome. This is me trying them out with His Excellency Count Gemini, who was Connor's squire, and I think he's a count at this point in the pick. We had been practicing on a hilltop, but people were getting horrified at our enthusiasm. We were moving too fast and the blades were bending and we were having the time of our life. So this, I'm doing a draw cut. I had gone in there, had gone behind him, and I had just done the draw cut and walked out and just having fun and laughing, just having a great time. So that's showing I could actually, be in the stance and do a regular rapier thing. So my spidey sense was tingling there. So the exchange for the helmet, that's when Patrick Thaden made. And I had asked him to get a rapier exchange. And it's the only thing about the helmet that bugs me. So, and the laurel wreath trying to stick out his crown on the field. Taking a break with Xander in the middle of the
sweet picture.
Australia. So one of my favorite shots of us. This is stepping down with Alishka at the sheep ranch where that Hurley picture was. So the Italians have some sense, just like the Germans. I like it. This is her final words. And the next one was going to Vera's pelicaning ceremony, escorting her in. So Sternbach, a pickup war unit that I put together, I think this is probably Estrella at that point. So we just don't have surcoats, the red sash, put it on and go. This is Duke Matthias and myself being made members of the Heroes of the West. I think the 4th and 5th members of that. Xander had wanted to, come up in court, so he came up with me and he was playing with my chain and I took it off and put it on him. He told me he'd have to earn it himself someday, but he could have it for then.
Nice.
Wow.
Doing a bunch of armoring and stuff for the Battle of Nation stuff, learning how to do stuff with the high strength alloys, learning how to do all the tempering and stuff. Doing an attempt at the construction by pieces for a helmet for a friend.
I just love everything hanging from the ceiling.
There was so much going on trying to get enough people in armor to be able to have the practice and everything else. Every row of the ceiling was different type of armor. These were the arms, these were shoulders, these were legs. This section was untempered. This one was tempered, in process. It was crazy. Just another sweaty Great Western or Estrella pick. So I seem to have not brought my shield to events before. This is having to borrow Connor's and putting the X on it so I can fight. The helmet was made by a guy over in Europe. I'll have to think of his name in a second, but someone was selling it because it was too small for him. So I picked it up because, tempered helmets, that's why I can get those things. And I love it. So
It's beautiful.
yeah, I've been fighting that.
So I think the next pictures are Battle of the Nation, and I'll just sort of go through them pretty fast.
Yeah, just go ahead and skip through those. Okay. One thing that was amazing with the Battle of Nations is that it was important to me. This is over in Italy with the USA team. This is the next one's be practice of the local guys in California practicing for it. But really having to learn about the armoring and making stuff that really has to stop significant blows, that has to be able to be maintained, figuring out what the other countries are doing and learning how to temper it. was amazing. But also, a lot of us really wanted to show that the SCA had something to offer. You know, the training and all the fighting and everything else we do does translate. And I think that we, got a lot of credit for that. This is Bala Nations over in Spain. There was an aviary set up that had bald eagles. Why wouldn't you get a picture taken with the bald eagle?
Wow.
Yeah.
So one of the 21-on-21 fights, against Denmark in there, I think. So in the center of that one, that's a shield that Hillary, the puppeteer, Mistress Hillary, painted for me.
Beautiful.
And then we've got Antonio had asked actually Antonio what we could do about trying to do more fun things in the West. And I told him that my thoughts about having events that aren't centered around fighting, that there's something for everybody. And that was the result of that, which was the town fair. Something that didn't have an eric, something that just had roads and that you kind of gathered in the center of those roads. And you had like stages at the edges that you could have, arts performances, you could have plays, you could have musicians, you could have things going all over that you could, travel between. So that was that. Fighting for my lovely lady Alishka again. Saluting my opponent, because my opponents get that salute. Alishka gets the kneeling salute. I was wearing some of the Bala Nations chassis, which aren't designed to be used like this. They're actually falling down a little bit. This is finals with Mikolash. Actually showed up to this event and Connor was king and told me that he needed me to enter the list. Like, oh shit, I brought stuff to do slow work with Squires. I didn't bring everything. So we've had like 15, 20 minutes to get everything figured out whether to be able to enter the list or not. So, and there I am in finals with Mikolash, having a great set. He was such a fun king. So yeah, doing an offside with him, just a bunch of fights with him. So the Fellowship of the Argent Angels, who do the Crapode tournament, they host it, have a tradition about dicing before the finals in crowns. They'll just bring out a shield, throw it upside down. They'll start, rolling dice, and whoever gets the low score that round has to buy a beer to the winner, and just so it's a fun thing. Everybody just jumps on and does, and takes care of it later. Davernrish European Martial Arts is a medieval training school that's here in San Jose, and just another group of people that are training in full armor, using steel weapons in various forms. This is a dagger fight. They have daggers they can actually thrust with there, and I'm marshaling that. A celebration in Poland after a 5-man match that we won. I think the tournament is over at that point. So this is more celebration happening at the same thing. We're in Malbork Castle in Poland.
What a great backdrop.
These are held in medieval walled cities or in castles or other historic places. Just that's Malbork Castle again, just getting ready, focusing before a match. Now you think that SCA pavilions are difficult to set up? Imagine getting there and they just have timbers that are cut to a certain length and they have canvas dumped and you need to figure out how to put it together. I mean, all the poles are the same lengths or they have different sets, diameters of stuff. And we're just like looking and saying, what the hell is this? Just trying to spread things around, try to figure it out. So that's in Prague, on the hilltop on Prague that you have to get to by tram.
Wow.
Yeah. That's in Prague. Anthony, Duke Uther is the captain for the Bala Nations team, the entire team this year. And there was a moment of silence for something that had happened to some other team. I think that there had been some civil unrest and one of their members had been killed. I think that was in Ukraine. Anthony and I ending one of the matches. Fight's over now. We can go home. That's the 5-man team that Anthony was leading. Of course, he was in charge of everything that year, but this is one that he fought in as well. So that's 8 of us that have come together to fight. And Jeffrey Galley in the back was helping to coach. This is right after the one in Malbork, Poland. So we had gone to that for 1 week and I had fought in and all the tournaments for that weekend. They came over here and did the next weekend in Prague. Providura, I believe, just another one, a fabulous opportunity to have a heraldic display and flowery speeches. So this is my banner, and my lovely lady and my son is in the middle there.
Cool. Oh, look at that hat. Wow.
Yeah. I'm sure she said something. She's pleased with herself. Yeah, I'm just sharing a special moment during, this is during the crown lists. This is Vera's pelicaning ceremony. Duke Titus and myself escorted her in. Duke Mark on the left at the A&S tournament, he's doing a class on fighting. He's doing a lot of stuff with HEMA as well. And so he's, doing classes on how to transition and those sort of things that you can also get if you cross-pollinate. The epic sword oath of Helga. So that was one that was fun to be part of. Her knighting, of course. So these are the Soborg brothers from Denmark. Frederick and Matthias. Xander came over with me to help coach the team in Italy that year, and took him out of school. He got to see Rome and all the Colosseum and do all the sightseeing. He helped doing all the schlepping of armor and setting stuff up, did all the fetch and carry. And as a reward afterwards, we were going around the stalls trying to find out what he wanted, and that's the hoodie he wanted. As we were leaving, we were in the next town stopping with somebody else before we went to the airport. And there was a group of people that were in the corner, having dinner before everyone just departed. So we went in there, and they're the Soborg brothers. He got a chance to have a picture taken with them, chat them up for a little bit before he went on the airplane.
Is he interested in fighting?
He was doing youth combat and having a lot of fun. He's now, since this would have been his last year, or last year would have been his last year, he could have done that. So we'll need to see if he transitions. It's kind of, it'd be nice for him to, but I also don't have any pressure to him to see. There's he's already expressed that there's a lot of stress associated with being my son and going out there and being compared.
Our son has said something similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're having him talk to Brian of Bellatrix, actually. Yeah, and just go ahead and get some inside advice from that. So Duke Garrick von Kupke, you had asked someone else on one of your things about who you had the most fun fighting. We've already talked about Jade and Radnor and just how awesome they are. There were 3 monthly tournaments in the area. We had the Krapo that was once a month, the Fetford Field of Honor, which is out in Stockton, was once a month, and the Dalmsdale tournament, which is the Ladies of the Mists tournament, which was done in a pot of arms style down in Monterey. And I started going to all 3 of those tournaments, and it's brutal when all 3 of those tournaments are on consecutive, like a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. They're 100 miles in different directions that you're up till all hours of the night. But at his Dalmsdale tournament, the thing that makes it so awesome is that no matter what level of fighter there are, there's always a way of leveling out the field. There were times where they would give the newer fighters a pole arm. They have to hit me once with one good blow, and the ladies of the gallery would give me a dagger, and I'd have to kill the guy 5 times in order for me to win the fight. Go have a good time. And so you would basically be able to customize these tournaments, these fights, to make it fun for everybody. And Garrick had seen one of my dagger fights that I was subjected to, and he said, "That looks like fun. I want to do a dagger fight." So when it came time for him, he challenged me to a dagger fight. And when he was getting his gear together, he found out that he, didn't have one of his gauntlets, or it wasn't in repair, so we had to use the basket hilt or something for it. And so he was going to use a sword in one hand and a dagger in the other. I'm like, that's just going to be a stupid blocking weapon. We're only going to kill with a sword. Let's make this one a bludgeon and call it good. So you can do whatever you want with this thing. It's not going to kill you. You have to hit with a dagger. He goes, okay, great. 3 good blows. Let's go. And went around and was fighting him. And I just remember, smacking the side of the head with a sword. And he goes, "I don't have to take that." I'm like, "You are absolutely right." And just giggling, having the time of my life, hitting with a sword that he didn't think he needed to block. And then he upped his, decision making, but we ended up rolling on the ground and stabbing him in the back 3 times, and he said, that's one shot. And so we had to set up and do it again, and change each other around the list field. And he's taking the wooden enclosure on the outside, taking off the end and blocking with the list enclosure, and just this rough and tumble, just having the time of our lives. No holds barred, let's have fun sort of fighting. And it just, the complete sheer joy that we ended up having in that was just so infectious. Just the fact that we could go there and do that in the environment that he had made. So much fun. And Duke Sean. So met him at Estrella. And he had just gotten back from the Navy. He was a young fighter in there, and it became an annual tradition that we would just, something to look forward to. We would go, and he was somebody else that was always taking the field, and we would always make sure that we met and did fighting and training and just exchange ideas, and it was that way for years, until he was knighted when I met him, because he was knighted really young, but it's been fun seeing him take off and get his duchy in his own right and become one of the really premier trainers.
Super cool. Okay, well, we've been going a very long time. I'm one. Do you do anything special to your sword that we'd want to look at, or should we just go to the final 10?
I am very specific on how to shave the sword. Of course, you're not going to be able to see inside this. It is shaved. The handle is much thinner than you would ever expect. So I was making swords, we taught my squires how to make swords, and then Connor just got the knack that he would do it, and his swords always felt better. I was trying to figure out why. 7/8 of an inch is as wide as it is in there. It's all shaved in the front and back, so the sword just hangs. Everything is shaved on the side to give you like an extra 6 or 7 degrees of extension when you're fighting in there. And the entire thing needs to be just comfortable and loose in the hand so that the sword can just flow without ever having to grip. If you have to grip, your muscles lock up and you lose power and speed. You wear yourself out faster.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, let's do the final 10. Okay. What event have you never gone to that you would like to go to?
Sport of Kings would be one of them that I haven't done. And the Adult Swim, the other two. It's frustrating watching all the great posts and everybody showing up and having those great fights and doing that. And there's the exchange of ideas that's going to happen at Sport of Kings would be just a blast.
If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
At this point, just about anybody. Seriously, it's been so long since I've been able to be out and fighting. Just being able to make it to the field again and just share the camaraderie of crossing swords, it'd be absolutely fantastic and amazing. But
it's been 5 years for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Who are your favorite people to watch fight?
That's a very interesting question. Depends what you're doing. Because if you're studying and analyzing the fighting, you don't want to watch the fighter that you already know. You want to watch the other person so you know what the good fighter is triggering off of. So what allows them to start their fights and the combinations. I love watching Hansa fighting. He's fun because he's got a complete different style that's all his own. And he fights with just such a joy. And you're just watching him bounding around and doing everything and trying to figure out what he's doing is a lot of fun. But there are so many, amazing fighters back east that just getting a chance to be at Penzic and watching, the best of the best fight and seeing what they're all doing. Oh, that's a blast.
That is. What is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
Restoration, I believe, is one of them, and Horseman on the Roof.
Okay.
Used to go off and watch. My theory was that if you had a foreign film that was subtitled that was in a movie theater, this is before Netflix and everything else, but back in 2000, if you had foreign films that were coming out here and playing in theaters, they were probably worthwhile to go and see. So it was a monthly trip trying to find one of those, and turns out both of those are about the plague. It's been very interesting to rewatch those at the beginning of the pandemic just seeing more into it. But both of them, have, some very positive things about them.
Okay.
So we'll just see.
I don't think I'd ever heard the second one, so that's going on my list.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite tournament format?
I enjoy the pools where everybody fights everybody, and they either skim the top or drop the bottom, and you have to go ahead and fight it again. I love it when they also do that, where you have to change weapon styles between fighters. Someone you have to fight different weapon styles each round. Some of them, one in Lockhawk, it was like best of 13. Everything was different weapon styles and everything else. We ended up doing Indian leg wrestling at one point, just trying to find something else to do. It was very fun.
What's your favorite event?
Roni Festival, hands down.
If you could have any helmet, regardless of cost, what kind would it be?
Oh, I think the ones that the Archduke Sigismund had made. Those are just sexy.
Yeah, he makes some nice helmets.
Yeah.
You already answered who's your favorite fight ever. Let's see. If you could talk swordsmanship with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
Has to be one.
You can name a couple.
Bob Sharon would be one. Duke Khan. He was doing he was, I think, the first person to actually translate Fiore's manuscript. And it was interesting. He would come out every year and talk about the new things that he had learned, actually trying to study the medieval Italian and get the translation, and coming back later and realizing that his translation had been slightly wrong. He had to be interpreted this way, and just listening to the evolution of the progress of his understanding of those manuscripts, and then having the written manuscript having to be interpreted by fighters trying to make sure that the proof of concept worked, that we understood it. There were times where he'd think that something was one way, we'd try it out and it wasn't quite right. And it was just an amazing, amazing concept going back and forth. And I hadn't met anybody else that has done the translation and the studying at that depth themselves.
Super cool. That's cool. All right. So the last question, what do you think is the most important trait to become a successful SCA fighter?
Curiosity. A desire to understand and learn more. Never settling for less, never, always striving for more. I'm not sure which trait you want to put in there. But cool. If you're always trying to learn more and never settling for less, and just trying to better yourself and working on yourself all the time, you'll get places. Very cool.
Very cool. I really appreciate you putting all those pictures together for us and sitting here and talking to us for 2 hours.
I'm sorry.
It was no. It always goes faster than you think, and I knew it was going to take a little longer this time because you had so many great pictures, and we were going to hear stories. So that's all good. I thought it was fascinating, and everybody stuck with us the whole time. So they must have thought it was good too. So I really appreciate your time, your grace, and thanks again to Duke Felix for getting us in touch with each other.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for doing this. It's fun to see. I'll have to go and check out all the rest of them as well that I've missed.
And I probably will come back to you, maybe with Duke Sean, to talk about Headspace.
That would be absolutely. I would love to spend any time with Duke Sean, as far as fighting and training and theory. He's absolutely, somebody to go and talk to and do that with.
Because he and I are going to do something. What?
Have you been watching his Coach's Corner thing that he's doing Friday nights?
I haven't. During the pandemic, when that started, I was actually having some of the most challenging times I've had, not having access to my medical providers and stuff like that. It's just not even be able to sleep because of pain or whatnot. So just having something, it felt like it was just like ripped from me, and not being able to do it, and then not having the ability to really think cognitively. So recently, Stanford is doing fantastic, wonderful things, and the past 3 months have been amazing. Seeing the progress and headway that they're finally making. So You know, I was looking at everything like, wow, you know, they got the 300, 400, 500 crap load, whatever it is coming up. And that'd be a fun one to kind of shoot for, to see if I could get out there. And going through all these pictures and everything else and getting a chance to think about it again has inspired me. And it's frustrating. I've always studied video in order to really get better. And I just study and analyze stuff like Helga and Sean, you know, it's you know, kindred spirits there. But I've got, you know, shopping bag, big brown bags of you know, little mini DVs, stuff and VHS of all the different, you know, tournaments of I had fought in and everything else, and not being able to find any fights online. You know, so I need to go and find some way of playing those things, you know, so I can go ahead and start copying them and studying back what I used to do, so we can.
Somebody's got to have, you know, a VHS to whatever device that we can get those done for you. They've done a lot of them in non-tier.
Yeah, Sir Alvar sent me one of the camera types that I need. So I should be able to plug it in and start, you know, copying those down, just get the cabling right. And it'll be nice to see all the old fighting tricks. Because I've got it back from when Sagan's trying to show me this really elongated thing that I'm doing being stupid, you know, back to the session. Every session I've had with Sagan, you know, most of the fights with Jade and the Mission College and all the crowns and just
wow,
everything.
That's like a treasure trove.
Yeah, get that stuff up on YouTube.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you again, and thanks everyone for joining us. Tomorrow, Ishaxi is talking to Sir Ferris. Is that right?
Ferris, awesome.
Yeah. So that will. At least I'll let you talk about it.
He also does armor. And super excited about that. And he's why I'm doing the Laurel interviews. He had an idea to interview people that were into doing persona, and graciously let me kind of morph that into doing Laurel interviews. So super excited. And he's been really supportive of me doing this. So I'm excited to talk to him. And then Wednesday, we're talking to Arthur of Lockhaven,
who's old school Duke from Atenvelt. Should be very, very historically minded and interesting from a story perspective. So
absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so join us if you want to, tomorrow at 6 and Wednesday at 7. And thanks again, and we'll see you all later.
Thank you very much for doing this. Bye-bye.
Thank you.